Good morning, good morning. Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Sunday, February 4th. And this is a very important morning because Tuesday, February 6th, my tourist visa for Sumatra or for Indonesia expires. Therefore, Monday, February 5th, tomorrow, I'm leaving Indonesia and going back to Malaysia. And in the end, I chose to take a boat back. So rather than flying, I'm taking the ferry. It's an Indomal fast ferry from the town of Tanjung Balai to Port Dickson back in Malaysia. And to do that, I had to come to Tanjung Balai. I got here yesterday. I took the train from Medan to Tanjung Balai, and I'm staying in the Grand Singgie Hotel here in Tanjung Balai. So all of those facts put together, that's the story that I'm going to tell today in Planet Doug Behind the Scenes. Let's start with the ferry. It's got an interesting history. I think for the average person taking a ferry back and forth between Malaysia and Sumatra, it doesn't make a lot of sense because the budget airlines have pushed them out of the market basically. Flying is faster and in some cases probably cheaper depending on how you fly, how much luggage you have and the deal you can get. You can probably fly for less money than taking the ferry. If not, the same amount of money, they'd be roughly equal. And of course, it's a lot easier to fly. The whole world is built around airports. So you're in a city. It's like, how do I get to the airport? That's how you get to the airport. Everybody knows there's a train that goes to the airport, et cetera, et cetera. Like, how do I get to the dock to take the ferry? Well, that's a much more complicated question because you got to get to a different town and then you've got to get to the port. And, there's a lot more involved in knowing about the boats, how they work and getting to them. And then it's slower. In this case, it's much slower, which kind of surprised me, but again, this gets into history because I used to take this ferry from Tanjung Balai frequently. This was back in the days before I had a YouTube channel. I came to Sumatra a couple of times by ferry, and I took the ferry back to Malaysia back then. And I would go down to Klang in Malaysia, just outside of Kuala Lumpur, and then go from Klang to Tanjung Balai, where I am now. And back in those days, my memory is that the boat was relatively old. It was a lot of fun. It was really interesting. The boat was like one of those floating cities that, it went back and forth every single day, and it built its own economy on the ferry. It was a slow boat, and then people kind of lived on the boat, and they had little businesses running, selling SIM cards, changing money, providing all these services that travelers need. And I think the boat serviced mainly Indonesians who were going to Malaysia to work or coming back from Malaysia. They're working in Malaysia and they're just going home for a visit. So it's like these migrant, what do you call them? International workers. They're working legally. They're working legally in Malaysia, but their home is Sumatra, and then they go back and forth to their home using this ferry. And then there would be the occasional Malaysian tourist or tourist like me. And then, of course, we need to get SIM cards and change money. And so the boat had a really interesting atmosphere. And again, it was an older one that had a lot of interesting nooks and crannies to explore. And my memory is that it took about 7 hours. And my recent boat trips were from Port Dickson to Dumai. And the boat was a big, fast boat, a more modern ship, and it was much, much faster. And the journey took 2.5 hours. And I thought that was because it was a more modern boat. But now that I'm leaving from Tanjung Balai again, I'm looking at the schedule. The boat leaves tomorrow morning at 9:30, and it arrives in Malaysia at 4:10. The time difference might mean that it's actually 3:10. I'm not sure which direction it goes, to be honest. But either way, from 9:30 until 3 or 4 in the afternoon, that's 6 or 7 hours. That's a lot longer than the Dumai trip. So I started thinking, oh, is it the old boat again? Am I getting back on one of these rickety, fun old boats? But it turns out it's the exact same type of boat. It's a big, fast, modern one. So I guess the distance is just farther, or maybe we're going against the wind this direction. I don't know, but it's the same type of boat. I assume going at the same speed, but it takes twice as long, if not 3 times as long. And if you look at the map, it is a longer distance. But I didn't think it was that much greater a distance to go to Tanjung Balai as opposed to Dumai. But apparently it is. So that's that. Oh, and the other part of that story I forgot to tell is that back in those days, the company operating that slow boat, the old slow boat, was a different one. The ferry company that's operating now that I'm aware of, maybe there are others, but I don't think so. I think this is the only one. It's called Indomal Fast Ferry. So that's the service, that's the company I'm using right now. And back in the old days, it wasn't Indomal running out of Klang. It was another company. And that company went out of business during the pandemic. So when I was back in KL, I went to look to see if that boat was still running. I went down to Klang to check for myself, and there were no ferries operating out of Klang at all at that time. Even Indomal didn't have a service out of there yet. So this service that I'm taking now is a brand new one. Indomal has expanded their routes, and now they've included Tanjung Balai. I contacted Indomal when I was in Medan on their WhatsApp number. You can track that down. And they have a really nice website, gives the schedule for all of their boats and gives you the prices and what days they operate. It's very well organized, so it's a service that you can rely on. And it's a very professionally run company. And I got all the information from them, and I reserved a ticket just by WhatsApp, asking them, giving them my passport number, name, a copy of my passport, because it is an official international trip. So with a boat, they have to complete a manifest of everything that's on board, all the passengers and the goods and cargo, and they have to give that to Immigration and Customs, the ship manifest. So as you buy the ticket, they have to, in advance, send a passenger list to Immigration. So they'll need your copy of your passport and things like that. And these days, Malaysia now has the online arrival card. So they're much more serious about having a flight or some sort of pre-booked transportation out of Malaysia. So they'll ask you, what is your flight out of Malaysia? You have to have something confirmed that you can show them. Otherwise, they'll have trouble putting you on the boat, because Indomal doesn't want to be on the hook for you if you go to Malaysia on this boat and then Malaysian immigration won't let you in because you don't have a flight out of the country. They don't want that to happen. So anyway, immigration puts pressure on Indomal, and Indomal enforces the immigration rules that you have to have some sort of confirmed transportation out of Malaysia before they will let you on the boat. Then how that works for you, you have to figure, this is a common thing that all travelers encounter. Like long-term travelers, it's a problem that we face every single time, because we often go to places and we don't want to decide months in advance, where we're going to go next and on what date. So booking one of these flights at random, months in advance, it doesn't really work for us. So we all have our own ways of dealing with it. And I have dealt with it. So I'm good to go. And then at some point today, I haven't done it yet. It's a little bit confusing, this new Malaysian online declaration, the language. It says you have to fill it out within 3 days of your departure. And, I'm a native English speaker, and I used to teach English, so you'd think this would be automatic for me, but I'm always confused about within. So they say you have to fill out the form within 3 days of your departure. Does that mean before 3 days or during those 3 days, right? But I'm pretty sure what it means is during those 3 days. So you can't fill out the form 10 days in advance. You have to wait until the 3 days before your intended departure. Like this is for when you're flying or taking a boat or swimming, you know, whatever you're doing to get into Malaysia, you have to fill out one of these forms online now, and then you download the form and it gives you a QR code, I assume, and you have to show that at immigration and they'll scan it. So rather than filling out a paper arrival form, you have to do it online, which is a little bit odd though, because you would think, oh, the online form replaces the paper form. So it's an improvement, it's more efficient. But Malaysia didn't have a paper form. There was no arrival card at all. So when you flew into Malaysia, landed at the airport, all you had to do was go up to the immigration counter and give them your passport. You didn't have to fill out anything in advance, which I really like. But Malaysia did away with those cards. So there were no arrival cards on paper. But now this new system, it's not replacing the arrival card, it's like creating a new formality that you have to deal with. And it's really not a hassle. I'm going to do it today, now that all my arrangements are set. And I'm leaving tomorrow, which is 1 day before, so that I assume falls into within 3 days of your departure, inside of those 3 days. And I will do that today at some point. Could have done it yesterday, but I had a lot going on then, and I figured today's going to be a nice relaxing day. I'll take care of that formality now. I mentioned that I reserved my ticket while I was still in Medan, but I wasn't finished because even though I'd reserved it, I hadn't paid for it and I didn't have an official ticket yet. So the first thing I did when I arrived in Tanjung Balai is I went to the Indomal office, and they were open. They have an office with front doors, and you walk inside and they have a lobby and a desk, and there were 2 women there behind the desk. And then you go through the formalities of showing them your reservation number and you pay them. The cost, 650,000. And then when I was there, the woman helping me offered me the option of going VIP. And I've never done that in the past for no particular reason. It's just that the subject never came up. Every time I bought a ticket for the original ferry out of Klang or the new Indomal fast ferry, I just bought the ticket and paid for the ticket, and I was done. And in the signs, in my conversations with the ticket sellers, the fact that a VIP ticket existed never came up. So I never bought one in the past. And I wasn't sure about this boat, but then the woman did ask me, oh, would you like, this is the cost, 650,000, but would you like the VIP ticket? And I kind of went, oh, well, I don't see why not. It would be a new experience. I'm not a VIP kind of guy for the most part. I'm more of a, cattle class kind of person. It's usually more interesting, like to be down on the lower deck with the normal people, rather than rubbing shoulders with the elite up there in VIP, sipping their champagne and, discussing their butlers and things like that. And the next Lamborghini that they're going to buy, I don't have a lot in common with these mythical VIPs. But it turns out the VIPs on this boat are not up there sipping champagne. And if they are, it's not very good champagne, because the cost of a VIP ticket was only 50,000 rupiah more. And it's a funny thing, now that I'm leaving from Indonesia, I don't know if other people have this experience, but as you're leaving a country, you often have a bunch of local currency extra. That, you changed money, you got local currency, so I got a whole bunch of Indonesian rupiah. And then as you're in Sumatra, if you're living on a budget, you're very careful about what you're spending, and you're monitoring, and you're usually buying the cheaper things because, as a budget traveler, you're trying to save money. But then when you're leaving the country, or when you're going to an airport, this often happens, a switch gets thrown in your head, and you don't really worry about money anymore. It's like, what's money? VIP? Oh yes, sign me up for VIP. This tends to happen because your discipline about not spending money kind of falls away, and you often have extra money left over. And of course, you're going to change it to the currency of the next country. But it does feel like you have extra money to spend. It doesn't feel like real money anymore. So in this case, I've got right now about 1 million rupiah just left over that I'm going to have to change into Malaysian ringgit. It's not a lot of money. 1 million is like $100 or something like that. But it's a lot of money to spend, living a low budget life in a place like Sumatra. 1 million rupiah is 1 million rupiah. But anyway, I had all this extra cash. And when the woman said, VIP, I kind of went, oh, actually, yeah, let's talk about this a little bit. How much is it? And then what do you get for your money? And the thing I'm often worried about is, well, if you do go the VIP route, does it limit what you can do? So like if you get first class, does that mean you're stuck in a tiny first class cabin and you can never leave? Because at least if you go economy, you have freedom of movement. It's usually a much bigger area, and then you can just wander all over the boat. You can go outside and do all these things. And I'm wondering, okay, well, is the VIP lounge restricted space and then suddenly you cannot go anywhere else on the boat? That's mainly what I was worried about. Still not really clear how that works because I've never seen the VIP area on one of these boats. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how it differs. But anyway, she told me that the VIP ticket was 50,000 rupiah more, which is not, the ticket 650,000, another 50 bumps you up to 700,000. It's not a big difference. So I thought, okay, that sounds pretty cool. And then I asked her, like, what are the benefits? And she basically said the main benefit is you get to leave the boat first. So when the boat arrives, when I landed from Dumai, like when the boat pulled into the dock in Port Dickson, we sat on the boat for over an hour waiting to get off, which really surprised me. But they have to unload all the luggage first before the passengers are let off. And then I guess they let off all the VIP passengers and they get to go into the immigration lineup first. And then, yeah, like I said, I sat on the boat. It didn't bother me. I was fine with it. I mean, the journey only took 2.5 hours. So I was, at Port Dickson far earlier than I expected to be. I guess I never looked at the schedule for that boat. I just assumed it would just go putter along all day long. And when we pulled up at the dock, I was surprised we were already there, right? And I was just sitting in my seat. And then I just waited an hour until they let us out. And I guess all the VIP people, they're allowed out first. So that's an advantage, I guess, if you're in a hurry. But that seemed to be the only advantage. There was no mention of champagne and caviar or anything like that. But maybe the seating area up there. And now that I remember my original boat, the one thing I'm worried about is that if you go into VIP, you have no way of going outside the sealed cabin. Because these boats are like modern jets. They're sealed. It's not like an open boat, which I don't really like. I prefer the old, putt boats that are just completely open and you just walk around on deck, lean over the railing and enjoy fresh air and look at the ocean, things like that. But these are sealed, and they have one on the main deck, on the economy deck. There's a small balcony at the back of the boat, and that's where the smokers go. So the smokers go back at there, all the men go there to smoke. And getting in and out of that area is really hard because the door is a sealed door. It's designed basically to not let any water in. So, it's like a submarine thing, with a huge handle on it with a big rubber seal, weighs a ton. And then the boat is going so fast, it creates a lot of wind, air pressure, sealing the door and holding it closed. So you can't really just go out there casually, like, oh, I want to snap a picture of the ocean, and then you go to that door, and it's just like you got to put your whole body into it. It's like, and then the door like slams shut behind you, and it's crowded with all these men smoking. It's not a great experience. So that's what happens on economy. But on the very first time I took this boat, I shot video with my 360 camera. And I actually put 2 selfie sticks together to make it as long as possible. And I raised it way up into the air. And then when I looked at the video later on, I didn't realize it. But what I had done was raise my camera up above the economy deck into the VIP deck So I ended up with video of all the VIP passengers who were out on their balcony. The same as the one I was on, but I guess on the second floor. So I actually have video, I remember now, of that area. So that's the only view I've had of VIP. But my memory is there were fewer people up there, looked much more comfortable, and it looked bigger. It looked like a wider, more comfortable area. So, and the fact that it exists made me think, oh yeah, actually VIP might be a lot of fun. Let's do something different. I got an extra million rupiah to spend. So yeah, let's put 50,000 towards that VIP ticket. So that's what I have. And it turns out that they have a shuttle bus, which is kind of nice, because the woman did ask me, or she was explaining to me, well, the boat leaves at 9:30, but she said you have to be at the dock at 7. You know, they tell you this, you know, like 2 hours before, you know, it's an international departure. And then that's all she said. But then I asked her, you know, Google Translate, like, do you have any kind of a shuttle service? I assumed I'd have to pay for it. And then she said, oh yeah, we have a shuttle service. And then she asked what hotel, where am I staying? And then she said, yeah, we'll come pick you up. 7 o'clock in the morning, we'll be there. And it was no charge. So with your ticket, you get free shuttle service to the dock. Kind of surprised me that also never came up in our conversation. If I hadn't asked about it, she just would have let me leave, and I guess I would have hired a becak or something to take me to the dock, which would have been fine. But it surprised me that they offer a free shuttle, and yet it never was mentioned. So maybe that's one point where their professionalism failed them, you know? So that's the story of Indomal Fast Ferry, and then I'll find out in 12 hours exactly what the boat looks like. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I think it'll be very exciting. I just love being on a boat. So now that I'm here, I mean, it wasn't easy to do, you know, setting up the ferry, train ticket, coming to Tanjung Balai. I mean, it's a much more involved process than flying. And of course, in the end, it's going to take all day tomorrow sitting on the boat, which I'm very happy about. And then, of course, I'm landing not in KL, I'm landing in Port Dickson, you know, which is, you know, a couple hours outside of KL. And so there's a lot of details involved in this whole endeavor, but yeah, really looking forward to it. Yeah, the train ride. That was yesterday, you know, the whole day pretty much was all about getting to Tanjung Balai by train, and that was really interesting. So I guess that story will come up next, now. I talked a lot in other videos about buying the ticket. They're buying the tickets because I ended up buying 2 tickets on the train, because when I first went to the train station, I wasn't able to buy a ticket in advance. Like, if you go in person, like if you physically go to the train station and go up to the ticket window, you can't buy a ticket in advance. I'm still a little bit confused about that, but they just won't let you. You have to buy that ticket on the day the train leaves. And if you want to buy a ticket in advance, then you have to do it online. And then there's a whole bunch of confusion surrounding that topic for me, because I went off into the wild, wild world of the internet and I tried to buy a ticket online, but I didn't know exactly how to do it. So I'm basically on the internet doing random Google searches, you know, buy train ticket, Medan, Tanjung Balai, and I'm getting a big long line of options, all these websites and ticket service things. And I'm just trying to figure out, okay, I have to buy a ticket online, but how do you do it? I just didn't know, and I tried all these different services and nothing would work. Nothing I did ended up with me with a ticket. So I went back to the train station, and then after a long, complicated scenario, I was informed that there is an official Indonesian train ticketing app. And I guess in all of my dealings with everybody up until this point, you know, train station personnel, I've asked people, like people at my hotel, I'm asking them about buying train tickets, and everybody says, oh, you just buy it online. That's all I was told. But it turns out they all knew about this app. When they said, oh, you have to buy it online, what they meant was you have to download our app and then buy a ticket through our app. And through all my trips to the train station, I finally understood that. The woman, the customer service rep, explained it to me in a way that I understood. It's like, oh, so when you say this, you mean there's an actual app dedicated to train tickets in Indonesia. It's like, oh, okay. I wish I knew that earlier, because this goes all the way back to when I landed at the Medan International Airport, Kuala Namu International Airport, and right out of the gate, I was stuck because I couldn't buy a ticket for the train, the airport express train. You have to buy them from these machines, and you have to pay with a debit card or something. And I didn't have any kind of a cash card. I didn't have an e-wallet that would, that could communicate with these machines. So right out of the gate, it's like, oh. And of course, and it turned out that even if I could have, the trains were full. They were all fully booked. All the tickets were sold. But it turns out that while I was in Malaysia, I could have downloaded this app in advance, and I could have booked and paid for the airport express train before I even went to Sumatra. You just pick your day, pick your train number, and buy the ticket, and you're all done. Pay for it with touch and go e-wallet or whatever you have, and sailed on into a happy, glorious life of train travel. So had I been smart enough to know that this app existed, things would have been so much smoother. But anyway, when I was at the train station, by the time I kind of knew about, I have to download this app, the customer service rep used her app, and she bought me a ticket. And then I had to go to an Indomal, like a convenience store, to pay for it. But basically, she bought the ticket for me using the app on her phone. So that's how I got my original ticket, window seat 16E in economy coach 4. And I think there's only economy on this train. This is a train line that goes from Medan to a whole bunch of little towns, and it goes through a couple of larger towns. It goes from Medan to Tebing Tinggi, then to Kisaran, and then at Kisaran, the train track splits, and it can go either down to the coast at Tanjung Balai or north up to Siantar. And then from Siantar, you could go to Lake Toba if you wanted to. So that would be a very interesting way to go to Lake Toba, by the way, if you wanted to go the slow route. Medan, get the train to Siantar, and then from Siantar, there are there are options, local vans that go from there to Parapat. And Parapat, you get the ferry out to Samasir Island. And I'm sure in Siantar there's also like tourism packages and buses. If you stay at a nice hotel, they can arrange a car to drive you, all that kind of stuff. Back in the old days, I never did anything like that. The main time I spent at Lake Toba, I went there on a bicycle because I had my bike at the time, and I rode my bike to Lake Toba. But at some point, I did go from Siantar by local minivan to Parapat, and then on Lake Toba. But anyway, that would be a very interesting way to go to Lake Toba, Medan, Siantar by train, and then I would spend the night in Siantar, and then go from there, the next day to Lake Toba. If you're into slow travel, that would be an option. But anyway, so the train from Medan reaches a town called Kisaran, and then it splits. So anyway, I got, of course, the train that splits and goes to Tanjung Balai. Oops, the power went out. Yeah, it's been going out quite a bit here. I'm not quite sure what the problem is. And there's no light in here at all. Let's see, you can maybe see me from smartphone light. I guess flashlight, right? I always forget smartphones have flashlights. I can turn on my smartphone flashlight and give you a ghostly story time view. So I got my ticket going to Tanjung Balai that the customer service rep bought for me. And then I went off to a shopping mall and I got a coffee at Starbucks. And while I was sitting there, I thought, why don't we set up the app? Because the customer service rep downloaded it for me. She located it on the Google Play Store. It was called KIA Access. And then since I had, there we are. Now I have to turn off the flashlight. Oh, there it is. Remember ages ago I had a Motorola phone, and the Motorola had a really cool feature in the menu system. You could turn it on where it had a lot of movement controls. So you could turn on the flashlight by doing a twist. I found that such a genius feature. I don't know why, Samsung and other companies haven't, given it the option. I can see some people, they wouldn't want it because maybe they twist their phone by accident and they're always turning on the flashlight when they don't want to, but you can turn it off or on in the menu, it's a switch. And I loved it because every single time you're in darkness and now you're like, oh, where is it? You don't remember where the light is, right? And anyway, so I would just, the Motorola, boop, light comes on, boop, turn it off. Such a brilliant feature. Anyway, so I'm sitting there in Starbucks and I opened up the KAI Access app, and then you have to set it up, set up an account and go through all of that. And I successfully did that. And then I thought, well, why don't I just buy another ticket or just go through the steps? What are the steps like? Is it possible for me to buy a ticket? And I went through all the steps, and then I got all the way to the payment form. And I thought, well, why don't I just buy it? Again, maybe I have leftover money to spend. So I got a bit crazy. And then since I bought the window seat, I thought, well, why don't I buy the aisle seat right beside me? I'll buy 2 seats, and then I'll have both of them, and then I have room to spread out, and I've got my backpack. And if there's my memory of this train was that there were no real accessible luggage racks. So I thought, my backpack, what am I going to do with it? And then I thought, I can just put it on the seat beside me. And I was looking forward to this wonderful experience sitting in my seat beside the window. I've got the window seat, my backpack beside me, and then looking out the window, and maybe they would serve coffee or something. Oh man, it was going to be such a delicious experience. Like, there's nothing like sitting on a train, listening to the clackety-clack of the wheels, looking out the window. Like, is there a greater pleasure on the planet? If there is, I haven't heard of it. There's nothing like it. As long as you've got a coffee as well. I mean, that's just like icing on the cake. So yeah, I was really excited about this, really looking forward to it. But I forgot something. So I forgot something very important. So I'll get to that in a minute, because I've taken this train in the past. I took this train from Medan to Siantar in the past. So I knew what this train was like, but I just forgot about it. Conveniently, I had no memory of it. Anyway, I had a choice of trains. There was one train leaving at 7:10 in the morning, and there was another one leaving at about 2 in the afternoon. And I think, the 2 in the afternoon train was like perfect in a way, because you can spend the morning, you can sleep in, you have all that time in the morning at your hotel. You've already paid for the hotel room up until noon, right? If it's noon checkout, you might as well take advantage of that. And then you check out at noon, and then you have 2 hours to get to the train station and get on your train. And then you're traveling through the world in the afternoon daylight. Kind of works out perfectly. But in this case, I didn't have a whole lot of time. So, because I had to buy the ferry ticket. So I wanted to get here in time to go to their office and pay for the ticket and do any other, errands or, anything else that needs to be done during business hours. I wanted to get that out of the way because that was a Saturday and I wasn't sure what would be open on a Sunday. So if I took the 2 o'clock train, I'd arrive after business hours in the dark. And I don't like arriving in the dark, and I certainly don't like arriving after everything's closed. So anyway, I went for the 7:10 train. It was scheduled to arrive at 11:10, I think, or 11:20. Anyway, it's a 4-hour trip. And as I said, it goes from Medan to Tebing Tinggi, Kisaran, and then. So like when the train leaves from Medan, it won't be full because they have to have, people all along the way. In the smaller towns, they buy tickets in advance too. So the train won't be full when you leave from Medan, but don't get too excited. I always, I've had my heart broken in the past when I've done trips like that, because when you leave, it's like, wow, the train is practically empty, and then you can have like 4 seats to yourself or something. But of course, the very next town you stop in, hordes of people climb on. Like, I forgot that there are other towns in the world, and if it's not an express train, it's stopping off along the way, and all those empty seats are going to be filled up. So don't get your hopes up. So I got that early train, and yeah, it wasn't the greatest for me, because I was, I'm pretty casual about all of this. It's not like I'm freaking out about taking a train to a town and then some of the unknowns related with taking a boat across the strait, the Malacca Strait to Malaysia. These are things I've done in the past, and even if I hadn't done it in the past, I've done similar things. So I'm not freaked out about the logistics, and I'm not afraid of this experience. But at the same time, a lot is going into this sort of trip. And then the night before, you set your alarm. So I usually don't need the alarm because I often wake up when I need to anyway, but I can't trust that's going to happen. So, I set the alarm, I guess, for 5 a.m. and I'd pre-packed everything. I was ready to go, but I set the alarm for 5 a.m. and that would give me 2 hours to, wake up and take a shower. And I was going to walk to the train station. More about that in a minute. So I needed time for that. Something could go wrong, checking it. You need some buffer time. So I set the alarm for 5, and then if you're going to bed the night before, you're already thinking about what's going on the next morning. The 5 a.m. alarm is coming, and I'm so worried that I won't be able to go to sleep that, I want to go to sleep so badly. Like if you go to bed at 11, or midnight, you've got so few hours to get that precious sleep. And now I'm worried that I won't be able to fall asleep. And then the worrying about falling asleep is what keeps you awake. So basically, I got no sleep at all. I was just awake the entire night, and I'm constantly looking at my phone going, okay, it's 3:30, now it's 4, now it's 4:30. I know the alarm is going off at 5, I'm like, it's 4:30. I might as well just get up now. It's not like I'm going to sleep for the next 30 minutes. So I got no sleep at all, and I was exhausted, just like, oh man, this is going to be a hard day. I'm so tired. I'm so tired, and the day hasn't even begun yet. So from that point of view, the 2 p.m. train would have been the better choice. But anyway, it is what it was. And I, got up, packed, and left. I really enjoyed that hotel where I stayed in Medan. Really nice place, really nice people, really friendly. Everybody kind of knew me a little bit there. And then I knew the people at the front desk as I was leaving. Checkout was smooth and seamless. And then I just walked from there to the train station. And I was really pleased when I got there to see that people were already boarding. So I got there earlier than I expected. Somehow I thought the walk was longer than it was, but it was really a very short walk. And then there I was at the train station, quite an amount of time before my train was scheduled to leave. And I thought I'd just be sitting around a stressful train station waiting, but I saw people going through the turnstiles and getting on the train, so that was cool. I had an interesting logistics or design experience when I got there, and again I have a vague memory of knowing about this from before, like years ago when I took this train, but I'd forgotten about it, I guess, because right at the train station there's a couple of convenience stores. And there's an Indomaret. It was closed. It was too early for the Indomaret, but there was another one that was open. So I went in there just to buy a couple of cartons of milk so I could have the milk on the train. Again, I tend not to eat on travel days because I'm so worried about having an upset stomach. So I will start kind of fasting, preparing for a train ride that's going to go on all day. Because I would rather be hungry than sick in the bathroom for the entire trip. And that's very much true, more so if it's a bus ride or something like that. But anyway, I'd like to have a couple of cartons of milk if I can get it, you know, bring it on the train and drink my milk, drink my coffee, and that's what gets me through the day. So I popped into this convenience store, and I'd been into the Indomaret before, and I was really puzzled about these because you go into this store, it's a very small space, very small, narrow, and crowded, very uncomfortable physical space, to be honest. And then right in the middle, like the middle of the store, there's a big metal barrier, like a fence with thick posts that cuts the store in half. And because of that, shopping is a very complicated procedure because some of the items you might want are on the shelf on the other side of the barrier. And then this barrier cuts the cash register in half too. So in this case, the cash register was on the other side of the barrier. But luckily my milk was on my side of the barrier. And I kept looking at this barrier every time I went into one of these stores, like, what is the point of this? And I just assumed it was some sort of a security feature to prevent people grabbing things and running out the door, like snatch and run theft or something. It's like, what? I couldn't figure out what this barrier was all about. But anyway, I got my milk, and then I had, you know, someone had to take it from me on this side and then carry it past the barrier to get to the cash register and ring it up and then come all the way back to this side. It was a very inefficient and really dumb design. And I was puzzling in the back of my mind, what is the point of this? And then when the train was leaving the station, I was taking video of the platform, and then I saw that Indomaret and the other convenience store, they also had exit doors on the train platform side. Then everything made sense. So if you went out, if you entered the train station, you scanned your ticket, you know, you have to show your ID card. In my case, I had to show my passport and my ticket, and I used the e-boarding pass because I was using the app now. I'm all fired up using modern systems these days. I had a paper ticket, but I decided to just get out the phone, and I could get my boarding pass just like going through an airport, and I used that with my passport. So, you know, I went through the gate. Now I'm officially in the train station, and then when you're on the platform, you can still go into the convenience store because it has an entrance there. And now the barrier made sense because the store has a door leading to the outside of the train station and the inside. It covers both. So customers can enter from the city and they can enter from the train station, but they can't go from one to the other. So they cut the store in half. So of course, otherwise people would just go in one door of the Indomaret, exit the other door, and now they're on the train platform. And for security reasons and whatever reasons, they don't want people doing that. So they took their stores, all these stores beside the train station, and then ran a fence like right down the middle of them and split them into two halves. It was like, that's why they did it. So I was so glad to figure that out. Considering the overall look of the train station, like from the outside, it really looks to be in poor condition. It looks old and awkward and inefficient. And I think they're doing a lot of renovation right now. They're doing a lot of track building and things. So they're spending money on upgrading the train station. But the overall impression of this place is very much old school and kind of broken down and things like that. So from that point of view, the platform itself was surprisingly nice. It was really nice. Everything was freshly painted. It was kind of spacious, and they even had customer service sort of elements. Like there was a children's play area, you know, with slides and swing sets or whatever, you know, jungle gyms with some fake green turf, you know, covering up the cement. So it was like a play area for children. It was like, wow, this is kind of surprisingly nice. And you have access to the Indomaret and the convenience stores and things like that. I was like, pretty impressive. And then I just had to find coach number 4. I think all of them, as I said, they were all economy coaches. There was no VIP option. There's no first class, I don't think, for these trains. They're all economy. And I was really looking forward to, getting to my seat and having 2 seats. And then I went on, I found coach number 4. I went into the train, and then the light bulb went off, and I remembered. Oh, now I remember. A big problem with these trains is that the seats are like they're welded into place. They're fixed on the floor, so they don't spin around or anything like that. And the way they're set up, they're benches for one thing. So they're just like bench seats with a cushion. They're comfortable, but they're not, they're not like an airplane seat, not like a living room lazy boy or anything. These are benches. So they're benches, and the way they're set up is that 2 benches face each other. So even though I had 2 seats, basically what I paid for was 1 bench, and the bench was facing another bench. So I wasn't going to be sitting by myself. So my bench was here, and my bench was facing the wrong direction. I was going to be going backwards. And again, when I chose my seat, the woman at customer service, she called up on the app. It's just like a modern airplane app. You can actually call up, a picture of the train compartment and pick your seat. And then I was sort of, I think I said to her at one point, like, oh, it doesn't matter like which one, right? Like all the cars are different. Like choosing car 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5, they're all the same, right? And she said yes. And I'm like, well, I don't think it really matters. I just want a window seat. So I said, okay, that one. Yeah. But by accident, I picked a seat that was facing backwards. And of course, I always would rather have a seat facing forwards. So my bench was facing backwards, and there was another bench right there. And then 2 people are going to be sitting facing me. And these benches are designed for the Indonesian-sized people. They're not designed for people my height. So it's very uncomfortable. And I remember having this experience before when I took the train to Siantar. I think I did it a couple of times. And then I remember getting onto the train, and I was so disappointed because at that time I didn't buy 2 seats. So I was sitting on a bench on the window side, and then someone sat beside me on the bench, and then 2 people sat facing me, and there isn't enough room for our knees. So it's not like you've got a big gap between you. You're like jammed together, and your knees will hit. So you basically have to stagger your knees so that your knees all, interlace like a deck of cards, right? Because there isn't enough room, and there certainly isn't enough room for me. If you get some very, tiny, slim, young Indonesian women who have perfect posture, okay, if they're facing each other, they're going to sit perfectly straight, in the bench like this, and their knees will have a space between them, the person facing them. So if there's like a young Indonesian woman on one side and one on the other, they can sit naturally, and their knees won't actually be hitting each other. But if you put someone like me in the mix, and then things get a lot more complicated. And it turns out that when I showed up, there was a young woman, a young Indonesian woman, sitting opposite me on the bench already. And then whenever that happens, I'm so apologetic. I feel like I have to apologize for who I am. There's this poor woman taking the train to visit her family, go back to school, whatever it is she's doing. And she's got her ticket, and she's sitting on the train, and she looks perfect. People in Indonesia are so well put together with her clothing and her accessories. She just looked great, looked so fresh and cool and perfect in every way. And then I show up, and I'm stumbling onto this train, and I'm drenched in sweat, because I walked from the hotel. I'm sweating, and I'm big. I'm wearing shorts. I've got these hairy legs sticking out, and I feel so sorry for this young girl. It's like, I don't want to subject my foreignness into her day. I don't want to ruin her day. So I'm so apologetic. I'm like, I'm so sorry, but this is my seat. I'm so sorry. And she's like, oh, it's okay, you know. And then I don't have a very sensitive nose either. So for all I know, I smell, you know, I don't know. I'm kind of hot and sweaty, and you know, I'm not the kind of guy that wakes up in the morning and douses myself in cologne and aftershave. You know, I don't do any of that sort of thing. So I'm just sort of like, and I feel so awkward being so close to this girl, because our two benches are just like jammed together. And then the one thing I did say to her was, you know, this isn't as bad as you think, because I bought both seats. So I have this whole bench. So we're not actually going to be, you know, jammed in here facing each other for the next 4 hours of our life. And then so I could sit in the middle of my bench. She's on the window seat. So then our knees kind of naturally passed each other. And then another person showed up to sit beside her, and it turned out to be her twin, basically, another perfectly groomed, beautiful, young, you know, coiffed, elegant, cool and dry Indonesian woman came in and sat down beside her. So there's these two perfect human beings right there, and then opposite them on the other bench is just sort of me. Hey, how are you? I'm from Canada, and you know. And then of course I'm just like this giant, hairy Sasquatch creature, you know, facing these two perfect beings. And then luckily, of course, because I had the whole bench, I could sit in the middle of my bench, and then they would sit, you know, window aisle, and then if they could keep their knees over here, and I can get my knees in between, you know. But even though we could arrange ourselves that way, it had so many disadvantages to me, because for one thing, I'm going backwards, and I'm there with my, you know, GoPro cameras too. That's another thing. I'm there to shoot video. I want to record the experience. And now, how do I record without bothering these two perfect beings that I'm sitting with? And I can't record out the window anymore, because I bought, my original seat was a window seat because I wanted to film out the window. But now I can't film out the window because I'm forced to sit in the middle of my bench, and the window is over here. You know, and I'm facing backwards, so it's, you know, the whole thing, like my whole day as I imagined it, was not turning out the way I imagined. You know, it was so funny. The whole situation wasn't really that terrible, to be honest. I spoke to the two young girls, and they spoke English, one perhaps more than the other. This is a funny thing, though. I was so confused about one of the women, because, I mean, I ended up kind of speaking to the one who was sitting on the aisle, because she just seemed more open to conversation. And then when she showed up and sat down, I spoke to her and apologized for my existence all over again. And then we exchanged pleasantries. She spoke English. Where are you going? And she was going to Kisaran. So she wasn't going all the way to Tanjung Balai, and she was going there to visit her sister, because her sister lives in Kisaran. And she asked me, you know, where are you from, and where are you going, and why are you going there? We had that conversation, but then I felt like I was not including the other woman. And then sometimes she seemed like she was eager to talk to me and join our conversation, but at other times she seemed to be out of it and in her own world and looking down and not interested. It kept changing, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with her. And I realized part of the problem, and then I never even thought of this before in the modern era, like both women were wearing hijabs, and the one sitting next to the window, she had a pair of earbuds, like wireless earbuds in her ears. So she was listening to music from her phone, but I didn't know that because her whole head is covered up with the hijab, right? So it never occurred to me, like, you're out there in the world, and then there's all these, you know, women that you're running into, and you're chatting with them because you're sharing a seat on the bus or the train or whatever. Any one of them could be listening to music on earbuds that are covered up by her clothing, and you never know that. So that was what was happening here, that she was actually listening to music. And I didn't know because I couldn't see. Like normally, if you're out there in the world and you're on the subway or whatever, and you want to ask someone for directions, and you see someone with earbuds, well, you don't ask that person. You look for someone who's not wearing earbuds. But in the case of these women with the hijab, the earbuds are underneath, and you never know. Any one of them could be, you know, listening to music or something, and you just don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting. That was sort of a revelation for me, and yeah, kind of funny. And a couple of other, you know, it was very interesting to chat with him. That was quite nice. So, I mean, in terms of, my imagination was that I would be sitting by myself at the window in a seat facing forward, and it turned out I was on a bench for 4 people, crammed in there, unable to move, facing backwards. That was not a good thing for the way I thought my day was going to go. But I mean, it was also an interesting experience. It's a story to tell, and I got to chat with these women a little bit. So it wasn't all terrible. But then things were clearly not going to work in my favor because, again, these were young women, and unlike this giant, hairy Sasquatch Canadian, they don't like the sun. I love the sun, so if I'm sitting at the window, you know, I fling the curtain open because I want to look out the window and I want to take video, and I don't care if the sun is beating down on me. But that was not the case with these women, so they very much wanted to close the entire curtain and just cover, and everybody did, like people on the train in general, given a choice. If they're on the side of the train where the sun is, they're going to close all the curtains. And then foreigners, in my case, I find we always want to open the curtains, but local people tend to close them. They've seen the sun. They've lived their entire life underneath that tropical sun. So sitting on the train, you know, if they have a chance to sit in air conditioning and draw the curtain, block the sun, that's what they're going to do. We foreigners were there to see the sights, so I want the curtain open. One thing amused me though, when I sat down and I was sort of taking stock of my situation and trying to figure out how to deal with all of this, I noticed one of those giant Asian cockroaches poking his head out from behind the curtain. And the women didn't notice this thing, but I saw it, and then it was on the other side of the curtain, and I guess it was crawling up the curtain, and it poked its head, you know, just like Godzilla up there, the huge antenna and the big legs. This is a big, big creature. And it was looking out over the top, and I didn't point it out to anyone. I didn't want to freak these women out or anything. But then, you know, the cockroach kind of looked at us, and then it kind of went back into hiding again. And I don't know where it went after that. It could have gone somewhere else. I never saw it emerge. But then this woman who kept closing the curtain, she kept moving the curtain though, because I was filming a little bit at the beginning. It was pretty clear I wanted to take video, and we talked about Planet Doug, and I gave them Planet Doug name cards. And then as the train started moving, you know, I took video of the platform, and then in the first little while, I shot video out the window because the curtain was open, and I kept thinking about where is that cockroach, and I kept waiting for it to like you know, jump out at me and scare everybody half to death. Never did emerge. And then at some point, the woman at the window, she kind of pushed the curtain out of the way, you know, as if maybe to give me more window for my camera. But then eventually, you know, yeah, she just kept reaching up to the curtain. It would kind of nudge it a couple of inches, you know, and a minute later, a couple of more. And before, you know, eventually the curtain was completely closed. And so from that point on, I wouldn't be able to shoot. I couldn't look out the window, which of course would ruin the entire trip for me, because the whole one of the main points of taking a train is it goes through interesting countryside, interesting urban landscapes. You get to see things you never see from a highway or from a bus. So I love looking out the window of a train, and to sit there on that bench for 4 hours with the curtain drawn and being very uncomfortable because I still had to keep myself away from these women in terms of sitting. So I had to sit kind of upright. And then the bench was not designed for me either. It was like a curved bench, and it was designed for your body to be in the bottom curve, and then it curves outwards to give you a headrest. So the curve goes right here in the back of your neck if you're a certain height. But I was forced to sit upright, which means that the curve was like jammed into the middle of my back. So I'm sitting here like this, and it's like my knees, my feet are flat on the floor, and my knees just started to ache. It was like, oh my, I can't sit like this for 4 hours. This is, I tried to slouch, to get into that curve, but I couldn't really, go all the way down like this and like stick my legs out underneath the bench on the other side. It's not like I can sprawl, I'm forced to sit upright. So I'm forced to sit upright, the entire time, and then I wasn't able to shoot any video or look out the window or really do anything at all. And while I was sitting there, actually, I was reminded of my pre-YouTube life. In the days before YouTube, I was a big journal keeper. And like rather than an audio journal like this, I would keep a written journal, like writing letters to friends, things like that. And one of my greatest pleasures in life was to ride on a train. And then while, as you're sitting on the train and it starts to go, like if you're in Canada or something on a Via Rail train and you get a cup of coffee and then you have whatever, back in those days it was a notepad and a pen, and I'd open that up and you'd lower the tray and then you're writing in your journal and talking about the train ride, and that was just such a great pleasure. So I started thinking about that because I wasn't able to shoot any video. And I just felt this urge to like record the story of what is going on. And I was like, but even if I had, a notepad and a pen or some sort of a device with a keyboard or something in these benches in this very confined environment, there's no way you could get set up. And if someone came down the aisle saying, delicious coffee, anyone want coffee? I probably couldn't have had any anyway, because I couldn't get organized within that confined space to enjoy the coffee. There's just no way. There's no room to move. So anyway, it was not the experience I imagined. However, before the train started moving, I did go for a little bit of a walk along the train inside, just to see. I would normally walk the entire length of the train, like go all the way to the front, all the way to the back, shoot video of everything. I didn't do that because I didn't think there was much to see, to be honest. But the car right beside car 4 was an unusual one. And I was like, oh, I hope that's a dining car. I hope. So I did get out of my seat with my GoPro, and then I walked to the next car. And at first I couldn't figure out what it was. It had like a weird narrow hallway, and maybe there were cabins there. Maybe there were prayer rooms on the train. But then I turned a corner and it was a dining car. There were, I think, 4 tables and then a counter. And then there was obviously stuff going on. I guess you could get meals on the train. On the app, the KAI Access, when you're buying your ticket, you can also order food just like you're on an airplane. So I could have ordered, a breakfast or a lunch or something, and then they would bring it to your seat just like on an airplane. But I didn't do that. But the people, the staff on the train were busy getting all these meals ready, and you could see that they were going to bring them up and down the train and drop them off at people's seats. Though I don't know how anybody could eat that food in these benches. Like, who knows, maybe there was a first class section that had more comfortable seating. I'm not sure. But I don't think so. It never came up as an option. So I did notice this dining car. And I thought, okay, let's go to the dining car. Maybe, it's going to be a whole lot more. I wanted a cup of coffee, and I saw that they had a big hot water dispenser in the corner, and I figured they must have some kind of instant coffee, 3-in-1 package. It's not going to be great, but I mean, anything. So I thought, okay, let's do that. But then I started doing this mental calculation as well, which is kind of funny, where I didn't want to be rude, right? So here I am sitting in a bench with these 2 people, and I don't want to instantly just get up and say, see you later. Like, would they feel like I'm rejecting them? like, oh, the foreigner was so uncomfortable sitting with us that he went away, you know. So I kind of timed things. I tried to think, well, how long is long enough to establish that I'm perfectly happy, you know, sharing my bench universe with these two young women. So I sat there for a while, you know, curtain closed. I was sort of side-eyeing the curtain, you know, waiting for that giant cockroach, you know, the Godzilla of cockroaches to appear. Never did, but I entertained myself, and I closed my eyes for a while. I just sort of sat there and, you know, for all intents and purposes, giving the impression that I was perfectly happy, and this is exactly what I was hoping for from my train experience. And I let enough time go by, and then I decided, okay, let's go get a cup of coffee. And I started arranging my little knapsack. I had my big bag up in the rack above me, but I had my little bag with me that had all my, you know, camera gear and passport and money in there. My extra 1 million rupiah that made me a very rich man for a day and a half. And then I kind of got all my stuff, and then I turned to the women, and I gave as my excuse coffee. It's like, I'm going to go see if I can get a cup of coffee somewhere. And I said something about, I'll be back, you know, because I was thinking a little bit that if I just get up and leave, now my bench is sitting there. And if I can't sit anywhere else, and then I come back, for all I know, a whole family of Indonesians is going to take over that bench. So I did say to the two young women, I go, yeah, so I'm going to go get a cup of coffee, and yeah, I'll be back. But I mainly said I'll be back to kind of assure them that they're not driving me out of my seat. You know, that's not why I'm going. I want to go get a cup of coffee, and I'll be back. So off I go, and then I get to the dining car. And it didn't really work out at first. And this is another quirk from this part of the world. I've noticed this a lot, is that there were 4 tables in the dining car, but all of the tables were full of official staff or police or security. And I noticed this a lot where, you know, it's the train, and it's the dining car, and it's for, you know, passengers on the train to go have something to eat and sit in the dining car, but the train staff themselves will take over all of the seating. So in this case, I don't know exactly who they were. They seemed to be train station security and police. And I noticed them all day long. You know, they would come and they would go get off the train at certain stations, and other police would get on the train, and they all make a beeline for the dining car. And then there were like ticketing agents and other cleaning staff on the train. Basically, all train staff, personnel, security filled all of the tables, and it remained that way pretty much all the time. So customers like me, passengers, we got no place to sit. And I noticed that a lot. And doesn't seem to bother local people much, because, again, something I've noticed is that they just stay in their seats. So I think, again, me being a foreigner, I'm bringing a certain Canadian mentality into an Indonesian experience where, you know, what I want is to sit at the window with the sun blasting me in the face, and I want to go to the dining car and sit in the dining car and enjoy coffee. But none of the Indonesian people seem to want to do that. They close the curtains and they go to sleep, and then they're not going to go to the dining car anyway. So for them, the fact that train employees are filling up the entire dining car, it doesn't really bother them. It doesn't impact their life that much. But anyway, luckily for me, there was like standing area around the counter. So on one side, it was very narrow. I couldn't stand there, but then the counter kind of curved, and where it curved, there were like massive boxes and things like filling up this whole area. That's where they're organizing the meals and getting ready. So it wasn't like a clear open space either, but there was a little spot there where I could kind of get around the corner, get out of people's way. And then I asked for a cup of coffee, and then there was a guy there. He was actually sitting, there was nobody behind the counter. But then I kind of stood there at the counter, and I was kind of looking around for somebody. And then a guy jumped up from one of the tables in the dining car. And then, because, you know, as I said, all the staff, that's where they sit. And then he came around the counter, and I asked for a cup of coffee, and he made one for me. Just got a package. And then it was actually real coffee, like coffee grounds in a cup. Like, it wasn't a 3-in-1 instant coffee mix. So it was pretty good coffee overall. And he mixed it up for me, and I paid for it. And then I just stood in this little space near the counter. And I was perfectly happy there. And I thought, well, you know, to be honest, if I have to choose between sitting on that bench or standing here for 4 hours, I'm standing here for 4 hours. You know, I'm just, yeah, this is more comfortable than sitting for me. You know, so yeah, well, I just figured I was just going to stand there for a long time anyway, long enough to enjoy my coffee. Probably a second coffee. I had a nice counter in front of me if I needed to change GoPro batteries, do something on my phone. You know, I had a little workspace there. And then eventually one of the tables kind of cleared out. You know, we arrived at a station. And then, you know, some of the staff jumped up and they kind of did something. And then one of the tables for, you know, would seat 4 people was empty. And I actually kind of looked at that table, and I looked at all the train station employees at the other tables, and I kind of asked, like, can I sit there? Is that okay? And they said, yeah. You know, so I did take a seat at one of the tables. But oddly enough, the table wasn't much of an improvement over the bench, because it was basically the same sort of chair, like bench design that didn't fit my body. And I was like, oh man, you know, I'm sitting at a tent. I had to arch my back because I couldn't curve my back to touch the back of the bench because of the way it was designed. And I was forced to sit forward, and it was so narrow that eventually someone joined me. There's another staff train station employee was having his breakfast, had kind of a boxed lunch or something, and he sat down opposite me, and then our knees were just like slamming into each other the whole time. He was constantly under there trying to, you know, move his legs around. We were both like, am I hitting the, you know, the post for the table? Or, I mean, you look underneath, oh no, that's his leg, and I'm trying to, you know. Sitting there was not any improvement over sitting in my seat, to be honest. But I stayed there for the entire train ride. I never moved after that because, yeah, I never went back to my bench. So I lied to those 2 lovely young women. I said, I'll be back, and I never came back. For one reason, the train ride went by much faster than I expected. I mean, I was expecting to sit there, have 2 cups of coffee, and then, you know, enough time would go by that I was like, man, yeah, maybe I'll go back to my bench for a while, you know, I'll go back to my seat for a while, you know. Felt like, you know, I assumed I'd eventually reach a point where I needed a change of atmosphere. But the train ride went by so quickly that before I knew it, we were pulling into Tanjung Balai. And I was like, wow, okay. I never felt like going back to my seat. And I didn't seem to be getting in the way because all of the train station staff would just come in, sit down at my table and get up and go again. And the fact that I was occupying one little, you know, I moved way over to the corner, and I was doing a whole bunch of stuff on my phones, and I was like kind of keeping into a very tiny space. And then I left most of the table open for them to use, you know, because apparently they're meant for the train employees to use, not for passengers. So yeah, I guess that's the whole train ride story, I think. There isn't much else to say about it. Really enjoyed it. You know, it may not sound like it, but I mean, I really had a good time. I would take that train any day of the week. I would always prefer to take a train over any other form of transportation. It was a lot of fun, a lot of interesting things happened, stories to tell. You know, you got Godzilla cockroaches and torture benches and you know, all kinds of small adventures along the way. So yeah, I enjoyed that quite a bit. Arrival in Tanjung Balai was quite interesting and lots of fun. You really felt like you were arriving somewhere different. And I have a real history with Tanjung Balai. It's one of the reasons I wanted to go there to take the ferry. I wanted to revisit this place because long ago I took the ferry from Malaysia to Tanjung Balai. And even back then I have the same habits that I have now, that I don't often feel the need to do a lot of traveling. So, you know, I came to Sumatra, the boat landed at Tanjung Balai. I left the boat, went into Tanjung Balai, and I stayed there for months because it was such an interesting town. I kind of settled down and I lived in Tanjung Balai for quite a long time. So I'm very familiar with the town overall. And I really like this sort of small town, bustling small city atmosphere that you get there. So anyway, the train pulled in, and it pulled in earlier than I thought. So I imagined I would go back to my bench, chat with the two women a little bit before we arrive in Tanjung Balai, and then I would be right there at my seat, and then when everyone gets off the train, I can take down my backpack and exit the train. But I left it so late that I was still stuck in the dining car area because I went to the bathroom first. And then as we're pulling into Tanjung Balai, like outside of the city, and then I figured, oh, I'll go to the bathroom, then I'll go back to the, back to my seat. But by the time I was on my way back to the seat, the train had stopped in the station. And everybody was getting off the train. So I had to wait until everybody got off before I could even enter my car, right? So as always, I was the last person off the train. And, I put on my backpack and went outside, and yeah, it was like a lot of activity at the train station. Like when this train arrives, it's a big event in Tanjung Balai, and I had a lot of men shouting at me from the parking area. There's a gate there. They can't come right onto the platform, but these are all the Becak drivers, right? And they're there waiting for the train, offering their services to the passengers. And then they saw me, obviously, I stand out in the crowd, foreigner. Clearly, I'm going to need, transportation to take me to my hotel. So they're all competing with each other to get my attention. And then, of course, I have to break their hearts because I had no intention of going anywhere by Becak. I was going to walk. I'd already planned all this out in advance. The Indomal office, the ferry company office, was about just over 1 kilometer away from the train station. You exit the train station and cross a bridge, and then you're there. And I figured I might as well just walk there. Why not? It would be, for me, it's more interesting. You get to see everything, and rather than, arguing over the fare with the Becak driver and then jamming yourself into that little space and unable to see anything. I mean, sure, it gives you the advantage of not having to exert yourself by walking under this hot sun, but at the same time, it's not as enjoyable for me. So anyway, I was going to walk anyway, and all these guys, they're shouting at me. And whenever I say no thank you, jalan, I'm just going to walk. They think I'm playing hard to get. Like this is part of my bargaining strategy to lower the fare price. And it's got nothing to do with it, of course. I just want to walk. But anyway, these guys, of course, they just assume I'm playing hard to get. And then when I eventually got off the platform and through the gate, and then they're all crowding around me, Becak. And one guy in particular walked with me all the way through the whole parking lot because I had to walk quite a distance to get to the actual gate. And because there was a fence, you couldn't just go straight up. And then he just stayed with me the whole time, talking and trying to convince me that I really needed to go by Becak. And then you could see him calculating. He's like, is this guy serious? Like, is he nuts? He's going to walk? Why would anybody walk? Makes no sense to him. And then, we were a few feet away from the actual exit, and eventually he kind of dropped back, and he's like, I guess he's serious, And I kind of turned and waved, and he's like shaking his head. All right, I guess he wasn't lying. He's going to walk. So off I went. Crazy busy street right out there outside the train station. So much, not like highway traffic. I'm talking about Becak and motorcycles, like very interesting, chaotic sort of small town Sumatran traffic. Really interesting. And of course all the, the cafes and restaurants and food stalls and hawkers and everybody all around. A lot of activity. And in a town like Tanjung Balai, if you're a foreigner, you attract a lot more attention than you would in Medan. So if I had my Motorola, I could just I don't have to do anything. That was a very brief power outage. What was I saying? I guess I was talking about, how in Tanjung Balai, being a foreigner is a much bigger deal than it is in Medan. Like in Medan, people call out to you all the time and say hello, and they want to take pictures together. That happens even in Medan, but it happens tenfold at least in a smaller city like Tanjung Balai, where they aren't as accustomed to seeing foreigners. So I really felt like I was a superstar celebrity walking down the street, everybody calling out to me, everybody saying hello, everybody waving. And then when I crossed the bridge and I'm going through a little bit of a quieter area, I guess schools were letting out, or it was Saturday. I think maybe they only go to school in the morning maybe, but for whatever reason, the streets were filled with students, like high school age students on their scooters all going home. And groups of them would come up beside me, and they all slow down and they want to talk, where are you from, and they want to take pictures together. So I had a few encounters like that, which was pretty interesting. The biggest one, I think I have some video of it, at least I hope so, where a big group of boys were talking with me, and then they kind of went away, but I guess they were chatting with some other friends about, oh, we just met this foreigner, and the other friends were like, really, where? Let's go take a picture with him. So the crowd got bigger and bigger, and then the whole bunch of them came back, like a Harley gang, rode up beside me, you know, photo. And I'm like, yeah, sure, let's take a photo. They all pile off their scooters, and these are all high energy high school boys, right? Real pranksters, and they're all teasing each other and doing funny things and running around, and we're posing for pictures. And of course, I'm the awkward foreigner in the middle of all this. I never know what to do. I give the thumbs up and I give the peace sign, and I'm trying to be the cool foreigner for their pictures, but I don't know how to be cool. Anyway, so, and a lot of them, they all want to shake my hand and try out their English. You know, my name is Douglas, and shaking hands. And I don't even know how to shake hands properly, because you got to do the cool handshake with the different positions, and I don't know what's the modern popular way of doing it right now. I kind of run out of, okay, we do this first, and then we do this, and then we do like, I don't know what to do. What's the cool handshake? You're going to have to teach me. And then with a lot of these photo sessions lately, I don't end up with any of the photos, because they all take photos. And if it's a group of 7 or 8 people, they often use up to 5 different phones, right? One more, and they keep exchanging phones. And when we get to the end of the photo session, I kind of want to get out my phone and say, can we take one with my phone? I'd like to do that. I'd love to have a copy of all of these photo sessions, but it always ends up seeming like it's going to be too much hassle. We've taken pictures with so many phones. I feel awkward about, now let's do it with my phone. It's like one phone too many. But in this case, my GoPros were running at the time, and then the guy who was taking the last picture with a smartphone, I just gave him the GoPro. It's just like, can you just take, it's running, it's shooting video. Take some video of us. So then he grabbed the GoPro, and he was pretty excited about that. So he's taking video of all of us, and the boys are all going crazy. And I looked at that video briefly, like just a few seconds yesterday when I was copying the video files. I popped one of them open just to see, oh, did I capture any of this video? And I did. And you can just see me in the background. All these boys are going nuts. They're all dancing, and I'm standing there. I don't know what to do. I'm like this sort of awkward giraffe in the background, like I'm standing still, because I know I'm supposed to do something cool, but it's not my normal mode, But anyway, it's pretty funny. And then he turned the GoPro on himself, like he was shooting a YouTube vlog. He shot us, and then he's like, hey, and he's running around, and everybody's crowding behind him. So that sort of thing happened almost the entire time that I walked from the train station to Indomal. And by the time I got there, I was just, kind of overwhelmed and kind of frazzled. So many of these photo sessions and different groups, and everybody wanted to talk to me. Everybody wanted to take pictures with me. So then I got to Indomal, and I kind of told that story already. I went inside and I paid for my ticket, and then discussed getting picked up at 7 a.m. on Monday morning. And I don't know whether they're open today or not. It's a Sunday today, so I don't know if they're open. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I'm all done. Yeah, so that was arriving, going from the train station to Indomal, but then I had to go from there to my hotel, and I'd already plotted the route, and it was like a 1.2 kilometers to Indomal, and then like 1.5 kilometers from Indomal to my hotel, which is this one, the Grand Singgie Hotel. Story about that in a minute, and then I just continued my walk until I got here, and yeah, more and more pictures. I remember one I passed by a barber shop, and then the man, you know, inside, hey, hello, sir, hello, who are you? You know, where are you from? And then we posed for pictures inside his barber shop, and then I eventually arrived here. I'd booked this room in advance for 2 nights. I'll talk about that next. And then I settled into my room, and yeah, that was my trip from Medan to Tanjung Balai by train. Yeah, it was a very exciting trip. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, it's an interesting question. What is better? Cheap hotel, like low budget hotel, or more expensive hotel? And I was dealing with that question when I was planning my trip to come to Tanjung Balai. It's a little bit of a long, complicated story, I guess, but the thing is, when I was trying to book a room here, there was no obvious choice. You know, I called up Agoda, Booking.com, Traveloka, Google Maps. I have a fisherman's friend, so that's what I'm doing right now. Pet peeve time. It's kind of funny. I was in a convenience store buying some milk, and then I saw some fisherman's friend in the counter, you know, on a shelf below the cash register, and I looked at the price and was like, oh, that's a pretty good price for fisherman's friend. So I just grabbed a couple of packages and threw it in with my purchase. But then when they totaled them up, it was 3 times more expensive than the listed price on the shelf. And that drives me crazy. You know, it happens a lot that you go, even if you go into like a modern store here in Sumatra, and then you look at things on the shelf and you make a judgment call. Oh, do I want to buy Fisherman's Friends? You look at the price. Oh yeah, actually it's a pretty good price. And you buy them and it turns out that isn't the real price. They're not updated or something. Anyway, these are very expensive, but they're very good. It's one of my favorite candies. Good for your throat as well. These are lemon Fisherman's Friends. I bought a lemons and an original. I like the original the best. Just pure, powerful mint flavor, you know, the original Fisherman's Friends. Has more menthol action, you know, the original. But sometimes a lemon is a nice change of pace. But anyway, I was looking at all the listings, and the hotels that were in my budget and that were in my lifestyle, unfortunately, they were all Oyo hotels. So like in Medan, I was paying about 100,000 rupiah per night, and that's about $6 US. So that's you know, the cost of my hotel in Medan. And then there were a bunch of hotels here, in not a bunch, 3 maybe, that were also, you look at them on Agoda, they were 100,000 per night. And that's instant, oh yeah, I'm going to stay at that. But it turns out they were all Oyo hotels. And Oyo hotels are a big problem because they don't accept online bookings. And the reason they don't accept them is that the price is too low. For, I don't know how it works, but somehow all these hotels in Sumatra, they signed a contract, a deal with Oyo, but now suddenly, because they're committed to Oyo, Oyo is giving away their rooms at 100,000 rupiah per night, and the hotel doesn't think that's enough. So even if you book the hotel in advance and pay for it through Agoda, you show up at the Oyo hotel, they just tell you you're out of luck. It's like, no, we don't accept that booking. So you basically just lose your money and you don't have a room at the end of it. So you can't book an Oyo hotel through Agoda. You just can't trust them in Sumatra. So all of my normal places, like in terms of the comfort level and the cost and the services, that's my wheelhouse right there. But I couldn't do any of that because they were Oyo hotels. And if you go to the reviews of them, everybody says that. Most of their customers are Indonesian, and they all leave comments saying the same thing, that, okay, we booked this place through Agoda or whatever service they use, and then we got to the hotel, and they would charge us double or triple, or they just wouldn't give us a room at all. And foreigners all said the same thing too. So yeah, you can't trust Oyo hotels. So those are out of the question. And then that left a couple of hotels. There's actually one here called the Asahan, and that's where I stayed before. Like when I lived in Tanjung Balai a long time, and I was staying at this place called the Asahan Hotel. And I can't remember which room I had, but I think it was like a, low budget, fan only, had no bathroom, so it was just a fan on the wall, single bed, and then the bathroom was down the hall, a shared bathroom. And that's kind of my wheelhouse back in sort of, backpacker days, bike touring days. And the price suited the conditions. So sure, it's not that comfortable. I remember these rooms being filled with mosquitoes as well. Like within a true low-budget hotel, the rooms are often full of mosquitoes, so that's why you travel with your own mosquito net, put it up over the bed, and you have all these things. And I had my own stove. I could cook and do all these things. And then a low-budget hotel becomes comfortable because you have all your own survival gear. And the price was so much cheaper than anywhere else. It balanced out. But now, that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. So actually, I contacted a friend of mine, a Planet Doug subscriber, because the Asahan and this other hotel, they're not listed online. So that's kind of a problem too, that these true holdover low-budget hotels, well, they're not hooked up with Agoda, right? They're just there. So you can't book a room in advance, and you can't find out how much they cost. But a Planet Doug subscriber made the call for me. They actually phoned the Asahan, got hold of them, and they were told, they got the information that this single fan-only room is 100,000 per night. And I'm okay with the physical conditions of this room. This Planet Doug subscriber, he's Indonesian, and I do find that Indonesians demand a lot more from their hotels than I do. So when he went onto their online book, like onto their Google Maps listing, and they have some photos of the room, I mean, he was just horrified. He was like, oh, this looks like nobody in their right mind would ever put up with these conditions. But of course, I'm like, I spent my whole life living in those rooms. That's that's my home, But for him, it was just like, oh, it's so disgusting that no way. And that's how it strikes him, because he would normally, and most Indonesians, if they're going off on a holiday, they're looking for a nice hotel, the nicest they can afford. I'm always looking for the cheapest available, basically. Anyway, so I have no problem with the physical condition of that room. I'd be more than happy staying at the Asahan, but I don't like the price anymore, because my hotel in Medan, my room there it's a low budget hotel. I think most of my Indonesian acquaintances would also not stay in a place like that. It's like, ooh, if you start poking in the corners and looking at things carefully, there's a lot of dirt and a lot of mold, and things are broken, and it's that kind of a place. It's been around a few years. But for me, big double bed or queen size bed, whatever it was, has furniture, air conditioning, private bathroom with hot water. You really got to play around with the system there and time your shower for the right time of day in order to actually get hot water. And then when the hot water comes out, it is that boiling, it's scalding hot. Then you can actually, burn your skin, it's so hot. So then you got to be very careful, and you got to adjust it. You know, so there are issues with the room, but yeah, I mean, big room, nice bed, nice bedding, private bathroom, hot water, air conditioning for 100,000 per night. So the Asahan, single bed in a closet with a dirty bare mattress, fan only, no bathroom, and only cold water bucket bath in the bathroom with probably a squat toilet for 100,000. It feels almost like an insult, because yeah, you can get a real hotel room for 100,000. Then this, horrible room should be, 20,000, 50,000 per night at the most. Charging 100,000 for that is kind of an insult. So I couldn't bring myself to do that. And the Asahan does offer a more of a standard room that has air conditioning and maybe a private bathroom, but they charge like 200,000 for that. And there's no way, I mean, the value is not there for 200,000. And then there was another hotel here. Let me look up the name of it, because I think it's quite an interesting place. It is called the Hotel Malahayati, and it seems like a perfect hotel for me. Like if I had my bicycle, that's where I would be staying, because the problem with it is, from where I am now, it is, from the train station, 3 to 4 kilometers away, and it's outside of town. So what would happen if you stay there is that you'd just be going back and forth all the time. Because I got to get from the train station to my hotel. Now I won't want to go to Indomal fast ferry, so now I've got to go from the hotel all the way back into town to go to Indomal, then all the way back out. And now if I wanted to go check out the sites and record some video for YouTube, now I've got to get all the way back into town, do all my stuff, get all the way back out again, and now it's time to catch my ferry, and I got to get all the way. Anyway, it's a little bit far away. And then I started thinking about the price for this hotel, much better than the Asahan, because they actually have if you click on their Google Maps listing, you can actually see photos of their prices, and they have standard room for 2 people, air conditioning, television, private bathroom, is 170,000 according to this. I mean, it may have gone up since then, but it was actually, according to the listed prices, cheaper than the room at the Asahan. So yeah, the Asahan, the prices are just like way out of whack with the competition. If you're going to pay around 200,000 per night, why would you stay at the Asahan when you can get a real hotel room? And this one looks really interesting. I love the design of the place, the look at it. I really wanted to stay there. But then I started doing the math in my head, because my other alternative is a place like this. I ended up at the Grand Singgie for a variety of reasons. Again, because I felt like I had extra money left over that I could spend. So I thought, well, I'm doing something a little bit stressful, taking the ferry to Malaysia, so let's make the hotel part of it as easy as possible. Let's, splurge a little bit. So the rooms here, depending on how you book, what you book, can be between 300 and 400,000 per night, which you can argue is double the cost of this other hotel. But then you have to factor in, well, I can just walk here, and I'm right downtown. I'm in the middle of all the action. I never have to hire transportation to do anything or go anywhere. So you have to factor that in. Okay, maybe you pay 200,000 over at this other hotel, but by the time the dust settles, you've probably spent 100, 150,000 on transportation going back and forth all the time. And then here in the Grand Singgie, because it's a more upscale, I guess it's probably the nicest hotel in Tanjung Balai. That was my understanding. You look at pictures of the room, you get complimentary coffee and tea and a big bottle of water, and there's a kettle and toiletries. Breakfast is included, and really nice breakfast buffet. So you start putting all that in, it's probably worth 200,000 rupiah. compared to the other place where you wouldn't get any of these things, right? So anyway, I talked myself into the fact that the Grand Singgie, where I could just walk here directly from the train station, and then I never have to worry about transportation after that. I argued that the higher price was worth it in this case. And so basically in my head, I went from Asahan, single, dirty room, fan only, to the lap of luxury at the Grand Singgie. And I convinced myself that this was the better way to go. So that was, yeah, that was quite an interesting journey I went on booking this place. And then, oh man, I don't think I'll talk about it because I'd be here forever. But when I was on the train, I still hadn't booked anything. And I decided to book this before I arrived in Tanjung Balai, just to get it out of the way so I'd have a place to go. I didn't want to be here and then wandering around the city, going from hotel to hotel, and then having all that hassle. I just wanted to get something booked. So I sat down in the dining car and I got out my phone, and then I was just going to book it. But things got really, really, really complicated because the price on Agoda was really expensive. So when I was looking at this room on Agoda, it was like 550,000 rupiah per night. But on Traveloka, it was 370,000 per night. So on Agoda, it was like 200,000 rupiah more for the same room. So I thought, and Agoda works for me, like in terms of payment on a credit card if I want to. The systems are figured out. There are no blocks there. And I'd never used Traveloka, so I wasn't sure. I wanted to use Agoda, but the price was so high. I thought, okay, let's book it through Traveloka this time. And then I ended up in this crazy internet wilderness of being unable to do it because Traveloka wasn't working. My credit card listing on there had expired, and I had to update with my new credit card information, which meant a whole series of emails and security codes and OTTP signal, and none of it would work. Everything was screwed up. And anyway, I had to jump through a lot of hoops. I sat there in the dining car. That's one reason the train trip seemed to go by just like that, because for much of the time I was drinking coffee and I had two phones in front of me, and I was like double phoning it again because I had to use both phones in order to fight my way through all these systems and emails and codes and rejections and problems. And I ended up paying for the hotel reservation through the Malaysian Touch and Go eWallet, which was my only payment option as it turned out, the way things, by the time the dust settled. And that was complicated too, because for security reasons, and they had to send security codes and things, it wasn't really working out, and I had to figure out a way to get over all these problems. It took a long time, but I eventually got it figured out. And now that I've checked into this hotel and I've spent one night here, it does raise the question of, well, after all of that, really was it worth it? Like going from the, low budget option at the Asahan to here, paying quite a bit more, is it really a much better value as I convinced myself it would be? And I have to say, I'm not really sure that it was worth it, because there ends up being, this hotel is a little bit disappointing, let me put it that way. I built up expectations. Like I convinced myself, okay, let's stay at the Grand Singgie, the best hotel in Tanjung Balai. This is going to be amazing. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be smooth sailing. It's going to be so luxurious. Oh man, I kind of built it up in my mind. So when I got here and things were not quite at that level, I kind of reacted a little bit, it's not quite what I was hoping for. Of course, if I was just like on a bare level, yeah, it's a great hotel and it's a great, comfortable, luxurious room. There's nothing to complain about. But it was not as smooth and as amazing as I had hoped. So for one thing, the Wi-Fi doesn't work. My 100,000 rupiah per night hotel in Medan Never had to worry about it. The Wi-Fi was there and it was fast. Occasionally it would kind of disappear, but it would come back and it was fast and it was reliable. Here, it's slow as molasses. It is so slow and it just won't connect half the time. So like, yeah, when you're staying at the most expensive hotel in town, you don't expect to run into these problems, right? Electrical outlets, there's one. Again, you're staying at the most expensive hotel in town. I thought, oh, I don't have to worry about all of my adapters and cords and whatnot. But it turns out there's only one outlet over here beside the bed, and there's none over here. There's like a desk over here, like it has a kettle and coffee. Everything is over here, but there's nowhere to plug the kettle in. The kettle is over here, but there's no electrical outlet. Small thing, but come on. Expensive hotel, luxury hotel. Where the kettle is, you should be able to plug it in. There should be at least 2 electrical outlets, right? One here, one here. Anyway, so then I got this giant mess of electronics on this side of the bed because I have to plug everything I own, including the kettle, into that one thing. And the room comes with a kettle, so I thought, yeah, great. You know, I don't have to worry about using my kettle because I travel with my own, but the kettle here is half broken. Right? It's like the lid is snapped off and it's like it's going to fall off. Like you try and pour the water, you got to be really careful because the lid is going to fall off and hit your coffee and just send it flying in all directions. And you kind of have to leave the lid on because it's got one of those safety features. If you take the lid off, the kettle won't turn on. And then by the time the water is boiled, the lid is so red hot and steamy, you can't remove it, right? Because when you want to pour it, I want to take the lid off, but I can't because it's too hot. And I end up pouring it, and I got to be very careful, you know? So the kettle is a bit of a hassle. Okay, you get complimentary coffee and creamer, but they give you such a tiny, tiny package that it isn't even a cup of coffee for me. So I can use that little package, but I have to get out, I have my own instant coffee, and I get out a big spoonful. Oh yeah, that's a cup of coffee. Same thing with the creamer. They give you one of these little packages, and to me, it's just like a little dusting of powder. And it's like, well, that's not even near the amount of creamer that I like in my coffee. So I have my own creamer. So even though this luxury hotel provides complimentary instant coffee, it amounts to nothing at all. It's hardly even worth using it because I use so much more coffee in a spoonful and creamer. I need my own coffee and creamer anyway. And my own kettle works better than their kettle. So all of that was kind of a wash. You know, you get, and the big problem is the Wi-Fi. I end up having to go outside. I have to go to coffee shops in order to sit down there and then use my phone's mobile connection in order to do all of my online stuff because my hotel room doesn't have Wi-Fi. And then my SIM card can't connect here either because my luxury hotel room is in the middle of the hotel, deep in the bowels, and there's no window. So I just assumed paying this much money I'd have a window, right? But no, this room doesn't have a window. And it's actually quite a bit smaller than I expected. I kind of went into this place thinking, oh, you know, you're staying at the Grand Singgie, it's going to be spacious. But really, it's like a rabbit's warren, narrow hallways going in all directions, tunnels, and then you open the door and the room is quite small for a luxury hotel. TV is huge, huge TV. I'm facing it there, so it's a great TV, I think. But I watch everything. You know, if I'm going to watch a TV show, I'm picking my own TV show and I'm watching it on my tablet anyway. So I never use the TV, even though it does have a nice TV. And you get, in theory, you know, complimentary, you know, things in the bathroom. So I just assumed, oh, I'm going to have some nice soap and some nice shampoo and maybe a toothbrush, you know, luxury hotel. But of course, all these luxury hotels, they don't do that anymore. They get one of these plastic pump things, stick it into the shower thing, and you're supposed to get this, you know, liquid soap that works for your, you know, your body and your hair and everything. But I find those really annoying because it's supposed to be everything, and yet it does nothing very well. And then they have a sink in there, but there's no soap at the sink. So now even if you want to wash your hands at the sink, you got to go into the shower first and get some soap there and go, I don't know. at a cheap hotel, 100,000 rupee per night, they give you a little soap puck and a little package of shampoo, and I actually prefer those compared to the fancy hotel system. And here you get it in a little box. So this is the grand Singgie, amenities package. I was very excited to see that little box, and I thought, ooh, it's going to be filled with fancy soap and fancy shampoos, but it's really got nothing in it. It has, Q-tips. Who needs Q-tips? It's got some sort of a wipe. Who needs a wipe? And some sort of a hair thing. I've never quite been able to figure out what these are, but I think it's meant for women. You can pull your hair back and then wrap this around it to get your hair out of the way so your hair doesn't get wet, maybe. And you get a toothbrush and toothpaste, and that's all you get. And most of it is of no use to me. And Planet Doug pet peeve time. Come on, companies. Here's this Nature Mint toothpaste. They give you one of these little mini things of toothpaste covered in a plastic wrapping. And I challenge you to get the lid off of this thing, because the whole thing is covered in plastic. It's got a little lid on the top, and you're spinning this thing and you're spinning this thing and it's not coming off. I mean, you're in there fighting and fighting. It's covered in plastic. How do I break that? I'm trying to get at the plastic to tear it off, and I can't get in there, and I'm like, and eventually, forget it. I've got my own toothpaste. I've got a toiletries kit. The first thing I do when I move into a hotel room, I get my toiletries kit. I got a hook on it. I hang it up in the bathroom, and everything's there. Toothbrush, toothpaste, razor, this, that, everything is there. So easy to access. So when you give me a convenient amenities kit, these amenities have to be more convenient to use than my own. And after, who knows, I felt like I was there for like 18,000 years trying to open that stupid little toothpaste thing. And it took so long, I never did manage to get it open. Well, actually, no, that one I did get it open. But then once it was open, I was trying to squeeze it to get the toothpaste out, and I couldn't get any to come out. I was like squeezing and I'm pushing, and no toothpaste would come out of the thing. And that's when I eventually gave up on it. And I says, well, I've got my own big tube of toothpaste that I bought at a drugstore, back in Kuala Lumpur, which is still going strong. Here's my toothbrush, toothpaste, I'm done. So it's less convenient to use the convenient ones they give you, if that's the case. And it's usually the same thing with those shampoo little packages or the soap packages. You're trying to open that little soap package if you have one, and it's so hard to open. It's much easier just to use your own soap. So all these companies out there that make these products for hotels, the convenient, complimentary soaps and toothbrushes and toothpaste, you got to make them convenient or they're of no use at all, right? So anyway, so that whole side of the equation in terms of staying at the nice hotel, that was no advantage for me either. On the positive side, even for me, there are things I get in a room like this that are a big advantage. One thing, mirrors. Like if you're going 100,000 per night at a low budget hotel, you're generally living in a world without mirrors. And if there is a mirror, it's somewhere so inconvenient and it's so dark around the mirror that it is of no use. Here, this place has got a lot of mirrors. There's a big full-length one on this wall, big nice one in the bathroom with a lot of light. So when it comes to shaving, things like that, it's much nicer, much more convenient. Though, little Planet Doug tangent here. It's kind of funny. I knew it was a mistake and I did it anyway. The thing is that when you are a guy, such as me, and you shave every day, as I do, you live in a world of danger when it comes to your razor blades. Because, I use these Gillette Mach 3, Mach 2, whatever they are. They're really expensive. Razor blades aren't cheap. They've been highly engineered and they're really amazing razor blades, and they last for a long time, so they are good value despite being expensive. But what I find I do is that I'm so nervous about breaking out a new razor blade that I use the old one for much longer than I should. Because when you open up a brand new Gillette Mach 2, 6 razor, blade, the first time you use it, you cut yourself to ribbons because they're so sharp. And I've got a little mole right here on the side of my chin, which is the bane of my shaving life, because you have to shave around it. And then if you nick it, even in the slightest, it bleeds like crazy. And it really affects your day. You're in there, you're just doing things on autopilot, wash my hair, brush my teeth, shave, I'm out the door. In the middle of that, you cut yourself open and then you're bleeding so badly. It's like, your whole day is like, oh, for Pete's sake, now I've got to deal with this. And you're constantly, trying to get the bleeding to stop. And then you're covering everything in blood. And it's just a hassle, right? So my normal mode is to make sure I never break out a new blade on a difficult day. And yet, for some reason, I took my old razor blade and I pushed it for so long, way over the mark, that it was like scraping against my skin. Like it wasn't sharp enough anymore. And day after day after day, I was thinking, okay, it's time to throw out this old blade, start a new one. But I didn't dare do it because I always cut myself so badly with the new one. So I had this old one going for a long, long time. It was barely shaving. You shave and afterwards you're like, oh, for Pete's sake, I still have a beard, because the blade isn't working anymore. So for whatever reason, as I was getting ready for taking the train from Medan to Tanjung Balai, and I was packing up, getting organized, thinking ahead to taking the ferry, getting all my luggage organized properly. In the middle of all that, I popped off the old blade and I put a new one on, thinking, okay, I'm going through immigration and everything. I might as well have a nice shave to look as presentable as possible. So the morning that I left from Medan to go to the train station, I was shaving with a brand new blade and I was being as careful as possible. And then, I don't know, I missed it or something, and I sliced open this little mole. And I did it like so badly. It just bled and it bled and it bled and it bled. And I was soaking up the blood and soaking it up. So when I left from my room in Medan, I was kind of worried because I had like this giant handful of Kleenex, covered in blood. And I was like throwing that into the waste paper basket. So anybody who came into my room to clean the room afterwards, if they looked in the garbage, they're like, wow, did he murder somebody in here, And I was trying to go to the train station. I was trying to get packed up. I was trying to go. And the bleeding just wouldn't stop. And of course, I knew I was going to shoot a GoPro video for YouTube about walking to the train station. And I don't want to be out there on the street filming myself, blood pouring down my neck, getting into my shirt. So I was waiting and waiting and waiting for the bleeding to stop, and it just would not stop. It took so long. It was just crazy. Anyway, breaking out a new Mach 2 or Mach 3, whatever we're up to, Gillette blade on the day you're flying out of the country or going through immigration, that is not the day to do it, because you're just going to cut yourself to pieces, And you end up doing the Home Alone thing as well, because even if you manage to shave carefully enough that you didn't cut your lip or your nose or your mole or your neck, even if you didn't actually cut yourself open, if you then step into the shower after shaving and hit your face with a bunch of water, it's just like, because it hurts, because that new blade will actually cut open your skin on kind of a micro level. And then when you hit it with soap and water, it's just like, it's like hitting yourself with that cologne, it burns and it stings anyway. So for whatever reason, I did do that. And then a room like this would probably be better because there's so much light in the bathroom. There's such a big, nice mirror. When you're shaving, you're probably going to shave better and you're not going to cut yourself open. Because in the hotel in Medan, there were no mirrors at all. And then you're just sort of shaving by feel. I've got a little pocket mirror as part of my toiletries kit, but it's so old. It's like looking, you might as well get, use the screen on your phone or something to kind of get a reflection, kind of look at yourself or something. It really doesn't work. And I'm holding this little mirror, in the dark, trying to shave, and I cut myself open. So, getting back to this room, the mirrors are great, the lighting is great. It's nice to see yourself, full frame, like on a big bright mirror. You can kind of look at yourself and make a judgment call. It's like, ooh, you can see what you're looking like these days, because when you live in low budget hotels for a long time, you never actually see yourself in the mirror. So you have no idea just how bedraggled you're starting to look until you move into a nice hotel. Then you look in the mirror, it's like, it's like, oh, what happened? What happened? What else is good? The bathroom is nice and spacious. So yeah, I appreciate that. And this last thing, I guess, is my fault, because one of the big advantages of staying here is supposed to be the breakfast. In a nice hotel, you get a nice breakfast buffet. Funny thing though, in these big expensive hotels, they do get more annoying than the cheaper hotels. Like, you get things like a breakfast, and you get kettle in your room, stuff like that. But then they kind of cancel out all those advantages by being annoying. So in this hotel, for example, you're required to give them a 200,000 rupiah deposit for damages. So they have to fill out a receipt for you, which takes more time, and then you have to make sure you keep track of the receipt and put it away in a safe place. And then the day that you're leaving, you have to remember to go back and get your money back, and then you've lost the receipt by then. Or you're leaving at 5 o'clock in the morning and nobody's awake, and you can't get your deposit because nobody's at the desk. That happened to me a lot when I was cycling. So every time I'm required to leave a deposit, I ended up losing the deposit because I can never get it back anyway. And they're a bit annoying too. I got the deposit, and then even the breakfast, they give you a coupon, or what do they call these things? A voucher, or breakfast voucher, good for one person, one breakfast. So they can't just put on a breakfast buffet and say, oh, have breakfast here. You got to make sure you keep track of your little vouchers, and then you've got to make sure it's got the right date on it. And then you go down there and you have to hand in your voucher. And it's just, if you're going to be a luxury hotel that offers your guests breakfast, just give them breakfast. Don't make them carry around these silly vouchers and keep track of them. And then in my case, this is what I started off saying, I'm my own worst enemy, because I came to this hotel partially because, I'm going to have that great breakfast. And then this morning I could have breakfast and I just didn't even go. I don't generally have breakfast in the morning. I want to get started doing stuff. I'm here in the room. I make a cup of coffee. I got things to do on my computer, on my phone. I've got this, maybe a behind the scenes video. And last night I went out. So I went out into the city, and I had all kinds of snacks while I was out there quite late into the night. Satay, padang, and things like that. So I'm out there eating and drinking all these things, which I don't normally do at night. And then when I wake up in the morning, I'm just not hungry because I was eating late into the night anyway. And yesterday was so exhausting. I got no sleep the night before, then the whole day on the train, and then I went out last night, and I went to bed quite late. So when it was time for breakfast, I noticed that breakfast goes from 6 till 10, and then this morning I was awake at whatever time it was, 7:30, 8, and I knew I could go have breakfast, but I also knew I hadn't gotten enough sleep. So I had to choose between getting out of bed, even though I don't want to, and going to have breakfast that I don't really want or need, or I can just try to go back to sleep, which is what I ended up doing, because I'm kind of mentally preparing for tomorrow getting on the ferry, and I want to be well rested for the ferry trip. That's more important to me. So in this case, I knew it was breakfast time, but I just put in earplugs, and I just turned around and tried to go back to sleep, and I did. And actually, I didn't get out of bed until 20 to 10. Very rare on a planet Doug, but I was really happy that I managed to get more sleep. I feel so much better now. It was much better for me to get extra sleep as opposed to going to get the breakfast. So I didn't even get my breakfast. And then tomorrow morning, you know, sure, they're open at 6, but the van, you know, the shuttle van is coming to get me at 7. And I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get breakfast tomorrow morning either, because, yeah, I just can't be bothered, right? You know, I'm heading to the dock to catch a ferry. I don't want to be rushing out and grabbing breakfast and then rushing, you know. And it's a travel day anyway, spending the whole day on the boat. And I'm not that excited about, you know, having a big breakfast, because I run the risk of being sick when I'm on the boat the entire time. So as I said, I prefer to be hungry as opposed to being sick, especially on a travel day. So I often let myself go hungry, you know. So, conclusion, is a more expensive hotel worth it in the end? For someone like me, no. There are other things in this hotel that are, you know, maybe handy for some people, and you're paying for those things. So for example, I'm paying for a double room, so I'm paying for, you know, whatever it costs for them to supply 2 towels. I paid for 2 breakfasts, 2 of everything. Everything in this room is designed for 2 people, and that's factored into the price. I am only 1 person, and quite often at a low budget hotel, they will have a single room with a single bed. It's smaller, and you can save money that way. But staying at a nicer hotel, they don't have single rooms, so you're forced to pay for 2 people, even though you're only 1, which makes everything twice as expensive. This room has a phone, which works, I'm sure. I haven't checked, but I'm sure it works. But I have no use for the phone, so I'm paying for a phone service that I don't need. This room has a beautiful TV that I don't need because I have my tablet, so I'm paying for the TV I don't need. It has a kettle, but I have my own kettle, so I don't even need the kettle. It has coffee, which I don't need. It has a breakfast, which I don't generally want. Room service, there's a menu here. You know, you can order if you want. You know, you can order room service, and you can get your, you know, very expensive beef burger or French fries, or you get your tenderloin steak for 100,000, 130,000 rupiah. You know, you can have food delivered to your room, and obviously I'm not going to do any of that either. So I'm paying for the availability of room service, which I will never use. I'm sure they have a fitness room here. I'm paying for the fitness room, but I'm not going to go to the fitness room. Trust me, I got my fitness yesterday. Just all the walking I did, you know, with my backpack. You know, that's where I get my fitness from. So I don't need I'm not going to be in there pumping the iron and getting the guns built up. That's not who I am either. I don't think they have a swimming pool, but if they had a swimming pool, I wouldn't use that either. So what's the point of staying in a hotel like this? And then, you know, you get all the annoyances. I didn't mention the other annoyance, which is these expensive hotels, they always threaten you with the charges. You know, they give you all these things in the room, but then they're very careful to tell you about what all the rules are. And then they have another sheet of paper over there that tells you that, you know, okay, if you break the kettle, that's $800,000 you have to pay. You know, if you make the towels dirty, if you do anything you do in this room, they give you a coffee cup. But even the coffee cup is too small. It's this tiny little dainty cup. So even though they provide cups, I still use my Tim Hortons cup because theirs are too small, right? So everything they offer me, I'm just so careful, because if I break that coffee cup, they're going to charge me $8,000 to replace the coffee cup. So you know, it's in the end, I think this is where I came down on the issue. If you commit to this kind of hotel all the time, then you learn to live with it, this lifestyle, and you can adjust your own lifestyle so to take advantage of everything. So for example, if I knew for the rest of my life I would always stay in a room like this, then okay, my backpack can get half the size and half the weight, because I don't have to bring my own kettle, I don't have to bring my own towels, I don't have to bring my own toiletries, I certainly don't have to bring a mosquito net. you know, on and on and on. I don't have to bring my own coffee and things like that. Over time, you would adjust to staying in a place like this, I guess. And then, yeah, then you would take advantage of the things that they offer, which in my case, I have a foot in both worlds, I guess. So I don't fully take advantage of a hotel room like this. But the one thing I always get back to is like Wi-Fi. That's it. The only thing I need is Wi-Fi. And if I check into a room like this that costs 3 to 4 times or 2 to 3 times more than my normal place, and the Wi-Fi doesn't work, I'm done with you. You know, I'm done with the grand Singgie. I would never stay here again, even if I had the money, because I need Wi-Fi. So that's it. If you don't have Wi-Fi, nothing else you offer me makes any difference at all. It's just so annoying. So yeah, that's the whole thing. Last story for the morning is all about last night, because when I walked here, you know, I walked here, as I said, train station, Indomal, ferry office, and then from there to this hotel. And then because of the route that I followed, I passed by the central Tanjung Balai park. And when I went by it yesterday afternoon, I stopped and took video of it, and I commented that this big open park, and it was completely empty. I showed that on the video. And then I went out later in the afternoon. I actually went around the corner to this chicken place to have something to eat. And then one of the main reasons I went there is because I needed to do stuff online. And the only way I could get online was to use mobile internet on my phone. And I can't get mobile internet in my room. So I actually have to leave the hotel in order to use mobile internet, because this room is buried so deep behind all the concrete walls. So I picked out this little chicken restaurant that had seating on the inside. I ordered some fried chicken, and I'm sitting there. I took pictures with all the staff. They all came running up to the table, said, "Oh, can we take pictures together?" It was a very nice experience. So while I was sitting there in the chicken restaurant, I got all my phones out and I did all the things I needed to do, you know, booking things and paying for things, everything I needed to do online to get ready for my trip tomorrow. And I'm going to have to do that again today. You know, I mentioned I have to fill out the online Malaysian arrival card. I have to go to a coffee shop in order to do it, because I can't do it in here because I don't have any Wi-Fi that works, and I don't have any mobile internet that works either. So actually I have to go to a restaurant and order a coffee just so I can get out of my room and fill out the arrival card. So that's, yeah, kind of annoying. But anyway, I went out yesterday, went to this chicken restaurant. I was there for a long time doing all of my stuff. I was really successful in everything that I needed to do. And then when I walked back to the hotel, I went by the park again, and this was around, I don't know, 5, 6 o'clock, and the park was jammed. Like, it just transformed from an empty area, and now it turned into a children's carnival playground and night market, night food market. It was amazing how much it had changed and how quickly. And so I thought I really needed to go out and hang out there a little bit, considering that's going to be, you know, my last Saturday night in Sumatra for now. And I thought, oh, I got to go out and wander around a little bit. I was too tired to do it, to be honest. I was exhausted. I was worn out physically and mentally from the night before and the day. But yeah, I had to go check this out. So, you know, I got my GoPros together. And then I went out around maybe 7:30, something like that. It was still a little bit early for that park. I think it doesn't really get going until 9 or something like that. But it was busy enough for me at 7. And I went out there. And my whole idea was also to record a little bit of video. And I tried to get this theme going. I don't know whether I was successful or not. But my theme for the video was that this experience of coming to a place like Tanjung Balai and then going to the main park on a Saturday night, that is Sumatra condensed. Like, if anybody was wondering, oh, what is Sumatra like? Like, if I go there, what's the vibe? What's the atmosphere? What is the experience like in Sumatra? that is what it is. Like if you show somebody that park and just get across the atmosphere, that is what it's like to be in Sumatra. Like they have this incredible array of small amusements for children. So they have these carousels, all kinds of carousels. They can be horses. They're normally, these days, they're cars and motorcycles, like mini versions of everything going around on this very small track. And the track is on wheels on a little trailer. And that's how these places can disappear and be rebuilt so quickly, because all of these carousels, and there's these big bouncy houses, you know, like blow up bouncy houses, all kinds of amusements. Children can paint, dress up dolls, catch fish, games, on and on and on. All these things are mobile. So there, the park at, you know, 2 in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon, completely empty. 5 o'clock, it just turns into this giant carnival and amusement park. And if you, as a foreigner, you go out into one of these places, you know, you're going to have the experience of Sumatra. Because I've gone to so many of these places, and I've seen so many of them, these like small town carnivals and amusement parks. And, you know, the local people will be so excited for you to be there. Everybody will want to talk to you, take pictures with you. And then you can go on some of the rides. A key thing about this park is they have a big open courtyard, like the size of several, like a soccer field maybe, or bigger than a soccer field, I'm not sure. And there's all these people there that are renting electric vehicles, like mock-ups of a Volkswagen Beetle or an old Model T jalopy, or little 2-wheeled motorcycles that the kids can zoom around on, or 3-wheeled things. And you rent them for like 20,000 rupiah for a certain amount of time. And they're all decked out in bright neon lights. And then you get to just ride around and go in a circle around this big courtyard with all these other people. So yeah, that's kind of the center point for this park. So I went out there and I did a few of these things. Of course, I had satay padang. I had, when I left from the park, I stopped on the street and I had roti chane, and I had martabak telur. I think that's all I had in terms of snacks. But I rented one of these 3-wheeled electric things, you know, all brightly lit. And I kind of went around, you know, the park a few times and took video of me riding the thing and video of other people. That was a lot of fun. And then I rode on one of their rides. They often have these carnival rides, again, that are sort of mobile. This one might have been a permanent installation, I'm not sure, because it was one of those big ones, kind of a big metal triangle. And then there's like a ship that swings back and forth. And this one, the ones I've seen in the past, a lot of these rides are human powered, where you actually have all these young, you know, teenage boys, very physically fit, and they're manually, you know, swinging these things and riding on them. This one was run by a motor, so it had a gas-powered motor at the bottom with some wheels on it, and then this thing would like fire up like really quick bursts, and you know, zoom, zoom, then get this boat rocking up and down. So I climbed onto one of those, and you can see that in the video when I finish editing it. That was quite interesting. So I did all those things in the park, and I took a lot of pictures with people. A lot of people, especially anyone with children, wanted me to pose with their children, and yeah, thumbs up. And again, awkward Planet Doug here. You know, I never know what to do. I'm trying to be cool and I'm trying to be relaxed, have fun with it, but I always end up a little bit stiff and awkward. You know, mainly because of the language barrier, I guess. And this is something that's interesting. It's been on my mind a lot the last few days. Maybe I'll tack this story onto the end, because there is this language barrier everywhere you go. And of course, you know, you can overcome it when you need to using Google Translate. In a quiet environment, you can speak in English and show them Indonesian. They can do the same to you. You can do that back and forth. And I did do that at the park last night, at the night market a little bit. But most of the time, like at a night market like that, it's not very convenient. There's so much music playing. It's loud, it's hot, it's crazy, it's chaotic. People are talking to you. It's not like you can, let's, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot of work to do the whole Google Translate thing. And I will only do that if it's a real conversation I need to have with someone. But anyway, the interesting thing about being a YouTuber is that even though I'm out there all day, like when I was in Medan on my last day, I walked to the train station, for example, and I was recording video all the time, and then people are talking to me, and I have no idea what they're saying because they're doing it in Indonesian, and I will say to them in Indonesian, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. I don't speak Indonesian. But the weird thing is, no matter how many times you tell people that you don't understand and you don't speak Indonesian, they don't seem to be able to understand what that means, and they will just keep talking to you in Indonesian regardless. So there's one young guy at the night market last night. He followed me for a long time, just talking and talking and talking. And I tried to understand him. I really tried, but I couldn't figure out what he was saying. And then I would tell him in Indonesian, I'm really sorry, but I don't understand. And I was kind of hoping, expecting he would drop off and kind of vanish. But he went with me for a very long time. And I was talking with some other people, and they got out a chair for me. And then this guy stuck with me, and the people around me actually got a chair for this guy, put it beside me. So he sat down beside me, and he just kept talking in Indonesian, talking and talking and talking. And of course, I could have done the Google Translate, but I kind of knew he wasn't going to be saying anything that would matter to me. And I wasn't in the mood for the big, long conversation, the interrogation about my entire life, which is often what ends up happening. So I just kept apologizing, but he just kept talking and talking. But as a YouTuber, I had this Rode Wireless Go microphone running all the time, and it automatically records whether the GoPro is on or not. This records everything all the time. So even though I didn't know what the guy was saying, I've recorded him on my Rode if he was close enough. So I have a recording of everything, and this happens a lot. It happened to me in Medan. I was on this quiet alleyway, and a man kind of came running after me. You know, my friend, my friend, my friend, my friend. He wouldn't let me go. And then he eventually came up to me, and he spoke for a long time in Indonesian, quite loudly and clearly, and I had no idea what he was talking about. But then when I have this audio, I can put it into my computer, turn on Google Translate on my computer, and then I can play the audio over my laptop speakers, and then Google Translate is listening, and sometimes it can translate what the person is saying. So even though I didn't understand the conversation at the time, I can actually go back with the audio file, replay it, and sometimes figure out what they were saying. And I haven't done that with the young boy or the teenager from last night, but I did do it with this man in Medan, and yeah, it was kind of what I thought he was saying, but I couldn't be sure, but I could get a lot more details. So anyway, he came running after me, got me to stop, and he was talking with me, and what he was telling me, based on the audio recording, is that he wanted money, and he wanted a lot of money. He was saying that, could I give him some money because his daughter is very sick, and she had to go in for surgery, and the surgery was very expensive, and she needs another surgery, and he can't afford it, and he would like me, you know, to pay for his daughter's surgery. That's what he was saying. I have all of that recorded on the road, but when he was talking to me on the street, honestly, I had no idea what he was talking about. I assumed he was saying, you know, oh, I can get a, you know, becak, and I can take you on a tour of Medan, and, you know, we can go together, and I can show you the palace, and I can show you the Grand Mosque, and why don't we go together? I thought that's what he was saying. If not that, he would have been asking for a certain amount of money, like, I'm hungry and I'm poor. Can you please give me some money? But it wasn't really clear what he was saying. And it wasn't clear to me because he was using a lot of unfamiliar words. So, and talking a long time. Again, now I know he was talking about his daughter and surgeries, and he can't pay for the next surgery. And that's what I heard in the audio. So it is kind of a funny thing when you're wandering around with microphones and video cameras. You do record a lot of these things that I don't understand at the time, but then sometimes I'm able to Sherlock Holmes it later and figure out what was happening back then, which is yeah, kind of an interesting side effect of modern, electronics, modern recording devices. Anyway, I think I will more or less leave it there. I can tell the whole story of everything that went on at the park, at the night market, but I will have all of that in the final video anyway. And, I kind of enjoyed it. From a GoPro Planet Doug point of view, I had a lot of trouble with my handy dandy rig because my Jaws Flex clamp, the rubber has gotten brittle, like it's got this grip in the jaws, and it's supposed to, grip onto things, but all the rubber has, gone brittle, dried out, it's all fallen off. So every time I try to clamp this to something, it falls off now. So I think I'm gonna have to replace this. It's still in good condition, like the grip itself is like a powerful hinge. Everything is still fine, but because of the jaws, the teeth are all broken. You can see all the rubber has fallen off. So I had this last night, and I was having my satay padang, and I attached this to a plastic chair, which I normally do. It grips pretty solid. And I'm filming myself. It's mounted on the chair, and I'm busy eating the side. And out of the corner of my eye, I see it go, koosh, and it fell off the chair and hit the ground. And I'm thinking, hey, action camera. So what is it designed for? It's not going to hurt it. So I just kind of went back, and I picked it up, and I put it back on the chair. And I thought maybe I just put it on incorrectly the first time. So this time I was very careful to get a good solid grip. Okay, everything's fine. Okay, I went back and I'm eating my satay padang, and then crash, hit the ground again. So clearly it's because of there's no rubber anymore. It doesn't have any grip. And then this time the GoPro hit the ground and it turned off. And it turned off the camera. I thought, oh, that's kind of weird, the screen. I thought the screen was just turned off kind of from a timer, but I was hitting it to try and wake it back up again, but the GoPro was off. So I turned it back on, and then I got the dreaded, the file has been corrupted message. And because when the GoPro fell over, it hit the ground, it, stopped the recording and corrupted the file. But at least in this case, then I got the message that GoPro is attempting to repair your file, and most of the time it fails, but this time, for whatever reason, it finished and said, oh, we have finished repairing your file. So it wouldn't have been a big deal if I lost it. It was only, talking about eating satay padang, but who knows. Maybe there was something interesting on that video file that I would have lost, but it survived. Anyway, I think this needs to be replaced sometime. Or maybe I can just put electrical tape around the jaws and somehow get a better grip on there or something. Yeah, the same thing when I was on the electric scooter. I was riding around the park. I tried to film myself and I was attaching this and the thing kept falling over. It never fell off, but even my gooseneck is too loose now because it's so old, and if you go over a bump, it starts to bend. So I kept having to put it back in place, and it would go down again. So yeah, I think this thing has reached the end of its life. All right, that is it. So the rest of today, I may go out, do some exploring in Tanjung Balai. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to go get a cup of coffee at a cafe right now and do some things on my phone because, as I said, I don't have Wi-Fi in here. And tomorrow morning, bright and early, 7 a.m., I'm on a shuttle bus going to the ferry dock. Yeah, looking forward to that. That should be interesting. And in a day from now, I will be back in Malaysia. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah, looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the boat ride. I mean, if I could extend my visa and stay another 30 days in Sumatra, I would. I mean, the main reason I'm leaving is because my visa expired. I have no way of staying longer, but hey, that is life, the way it works at the moment. Winding down behind the scenes for this morning. Not sure what else to mention. You probably noticed, or maybe you noticed, haircut. So I did get a haircut when I was in Medan. I was looking for like a local barber to turn it into a street experience, you know, typical YouTuber thing, you know, getting your hair cut at the small market barbershop. But I couldn't find one anywhere I went. And there was like a fancy kind of premium barbershop right beside my hotel. And I kept rejecting it because I didn't really want the premium barbershop experience. But in the end, I thought, okay, it's there, let's go get it done. It was sort of like the whole story of starting off with a new razor to get a close shave so I looked good going through immigration. I thought hair would be the same thing. I might as well get a short haircut so I look more presentable as I go through immigration going to Malaysia. It's part of the whole package of getting ready for a trip. And then so when I had a moment, I popped downstairs at my hotel and I went to this premium barbershop. And then the haircut was, yeah, I find I get a better haircut when I go to some crazy little stall in the middle of the market. In a premium place, it's sort of like an expensive hotel, I guess. Things start to get more complicated. So he's accustomed to giving fancy haircuts. So I go to a cheap place, I sit down, and they just get out the buzzer and zing, okay, there's your haircut. Now at this place, it's all about, oh, what style do you want? And can we do this? And we'll fluff here and we'll do this. And when the haircut was over, like there was all the lotions and the this and the that. And he's got this big, you know, range of lotions and different things. And he's offering them all to me. Shall we put this gel in your hair? Shall we, oh no, what about this one? Do you want some mousse? Do you want this and this? And, you know, wash your hair and blow dry it and style it. And I just said, no, I mean, you could gel up my hair today, but that's not going to make any difference in the long run because I'm not going to gel it up on my own. So none of the gels and the mousse and all that sort of stuff doesn't really fit me. So basically I just have to say no to all these things. And then he showed me a picture for a hairstyle. And then the picture he showed me, it looked like a guy with just short hair that he combed back, and that's all I do. So I thought, yeah, I think that's reasonable. And I tried to tell him I don't really want a style. And I showed him a picture of myself with shorter hair to get across the idea, okay, I just exactly how I look now with this crazier, longer hair, but make it shorter. All I do is step out of the shower, comb it back, and let it dry. And the picture he showed me seemed to be like that, but it turned out by the time the dust settled, I actually got a style, which when he showed me at the end, you know, he got out the big mirror to show me, you know, oh, what do you think, sir? I was kind of shocked. I went, yikes, that's what I look like now. I look like, have you ever seen the Seinfeld episode where Jerry got a haircut from the son, I think, of his usual barber? His normal barber wasn't there, or no, I think it was just like, oh, he got a cut from the older barber because his usual guy wasn't there. And he gave him a haircut that made him look like an 8-year-old boy, you know, like parted way on the side and then combed over the top and kind of flat to his head. And he was so embarrassed about it, he was kind of wearing a hat. And then Elaine forced him to take off the hat. And then George had the very rare experience of being able to laugh at Jerry for a change because Jerry looks so ridiculous in that haircut. And that's kind of what I look like. It was partially because my hair was still really, really wet. He like sprayed it a lot. So it was like slicked down and over the top of my head. And he cut off all the hair on my neck and the back of the head. So he kind of gave me a similar cut to the one I was getting in Malaysia that I didn't really like, where the guy cut off all the hair on the bottom and then he left a big mop of hair on the top of my head. And this guy did the same thing. It's all cut off on the bottom and I got this big mop still on the top, but then he kind of parted it and moved it over to the side. And I looked like I was, you know, it looked like from a school picture from when I was in grade 5, you know, that's what I looked like. And I was like, whoa. And he said, yeah, what do you think of this, sir? And I did say, well, I don't normally style my hair like that, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Because quite often I'll walk out of one of these barbershops and I may not think I look the way I want to look, but I don't really care how I look. I'm a guy, right? And what do I care about my hair? But also, as soon as, it's funny, they they position your hair so carefully, and they must, if they ever look out the door when you leave, they must be really annoyed at customers because, you know, I look in the mirror and I go, yeah, oh, good, 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 good. I like it. Oh, yeah. All I care is that I look neater. That's the only thing I care about, and I look neater. So I thought, okay, cool. I look fine. And then, but as soon as I go outside and I'm out on the street and I turn the corner, the first thing I do is just like, you know, I just do this, you know, and I get out my comb and then I do what I normally do. I just like, comb it back and I muss it up and I get rid of all the styling and I'm like, okay, there we go. I'm back to normal. So I think if the barber saw their customers, you know, guys in particular, you know, he kind of like, oh yeah, he's got everything coiffed. And I step out the door, oh, thank you very much. And I walk 10 steps away and just, you know, I muss everything up and get rid of all the styling he did. But anyway, so I did get a haircut, I guess is the point of that story. And I think that brings me more or less to the end when I arrive in Port Dickson tomorrow, hopefully, and get through immigration and customs smoothly and easily, hopefully. Then I'm going to go to the Port Dickson Seafront Hotel again. That's where I stayed before. But this time, I mean, I don't have any plans to stay there for a long time. I ended up staying there a long time before because I landed there with, like, I don't know, I tried to figure this out before, 30 or 40 videos from Sumatra that I still needed to edit. And I thought I could just kind of whip them out, but it took me like 2 months to edit the videos. So that's kind of what happened there. But I'm hoping not to do that this time. I don't have a backlog of videos to edit. The only videos I'll have are the ones that I'm shooting here in Tanjung Balai. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do in Malaysia. In theory, it'd be nice to travel around Malaysia a little bit, and we'll see if that happens or not. But that's the idea trickling in the back of my mind, though I don't have my bicycle. It is still stored at a friend's house in KL. And I thought about going to KL and actually getting my bike and putting it together and riding around Malaysia, which I had thought I was going to do last time. But then I saw a video on YouTube from a guy, a foreigner. He's doing it quite recently, and he was bike touring around Malaysia. And he posted a couple of videos about it. And then I watched his videos, and that just reminded me of what the roads are like in Malaysia. And they just aren't bicycle friendly, especially if you're, you know, leaving or arriving in a city like KL. It's just miserable. It's just not a cycling society. Roads are not built with any kind of bicycles in mind. So I was watching his videos, and it was just like, oh man, I don't know. I don't think it's a good idea to put myself through that. So it kind of took the wind out of my sails. I really was thinking about just getting the bike together, attaching the trailer, being free and easy. I don't have to worry about transportation, just riding around Malaysia. But then as soon as I saw his videos and I saw the road conditions and what he was dealing with and the things he was saying, and then I kind of went, yeah, it's risky. It could end up being an amazing experience. It really could, especially if you get to the other coast. You know, you get to the east coast of Malaysia, you know, maybe the cycling there is really a lot of fun and interesting. But when you're near KL and getting out of Kuala Lumpur, if you want to go to Malacca or something like that, you're dealing with some real difficulties in terms of finding suitable roads. And I thought, well, going through all the hassle of going to KL, putting the bike together, getting it out of storage, and then the risk is it's going to be a miserable experience. It's not worth the risk. And you know that traveling around Malaysia with a backpack or a suitcase, that's fine. There's no risk there. I mean, that's easy. You know, that's what everybody does. And then you have to find transportation all the time, but that's how people that's what normal people do anyway. So it's not such a terrible thing. Anyway, we'll see. So that's it. I'm going to shut down my stories for this morning, and I'll see you in the next video.